out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello, Tim.
Oh, God, Ryan. Blood.
And hello, everyone. My name is Tony Perkins, and welcome to episode 62 of Dismembering Horror, the podcast show where Ryan McDuffie and
Tim Haslund
talk about what worked for them, what did not work for them, and anything they found interesting or noteworthy about a horror film that they viewed. And today, they'll be talking about one of my favorites, 1960s Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starring me, Tony Perkins, and my dear friend, Janet Leigh.
Who else?
And Tim, that's all I gotta say about it.
Wow. It's a real pleasure to have you here, Mr. Perkins.
Well, thank you, but sorry to disappoint. I'll be back at the end of the show, but I was just here for the introduction. I'm going to hand it back over to your regular host, Ryan.
Bye, Tony Perkins, ghosts.
Goodbye. Thank you, Tony. That's so cool. We got to meet him. I feel like I can call him Tony for the first time.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, he set up what our show is.
God, he sure did.
I don't know
what a gem of a human being.
Oh, you know what? What he forgot to say, because I won't forget to say, is if you were listening to this, listeners, on our day of release, happy Halloween.
Oh, it's Halloween.
And I guess that applies to if you're listening to it on any Halloween from here on to eternity.
Happy future Halloween.
No, it's not a future if they're listening to it.
Happy present Halloween from our future.
Just happy Halloween. Yes. Happy Halloween. And this is, even though this is the first Psycho film, Tim, this is the fourth one in our watching of the four Psycho films starring Anthony Perkins. Yeah, I know. This has been fun, right?
It really has.
Great.
Except for the last one. The last one, not this one.
You didn't have fun watching it?
I had a little bit of fun.
A little bit. It's still fun. Come on. Come on.
I want to go watch 2 and 3 again.
I know. Me too. Oh, Tim, there's so much to talk about, though.
I know. God, I know.
So,
boy, do I know.
Do you just want to watch this actually famous trailer for Psycho and get into it?
Yeah, let's do our best.
All right. Here we go, everyone. This is it. Not the 1998. Hell no. This is direct from 1960. Today we're talking about Psycho.
Let's go along to cabin number 1. I want to show you something there. All tidied up. The bathroom. Well, they've cleaned all this up now. Big difference. You should have seen the blood. The whole place was, well, it's too horrible to describe. Dreadful. And I'll tell you, there's a very important clue was found here. Down there. Well, the murderer, you see, crept in here very slowly. Of course, the shower was on. There was no sound. And,
well, that was like a film in and of itself.
Yeah, if you've never seen that, we just watched. We only clearly just played a little portion for you, but that was like a full 6.5 minute little tour of the sets of Psycho, I guess. Or he was treating by Alfred Hitchcock, treating it more like a you know, like this is where it actually happened. That was fun. So this is kind of a first for us, Tim, in a lot of ways, or maybe just in one way. You know what I mean?
Like because it's such a classic?
Yes.
Yeah. We did, I mean, well, you're right. We have done a couple that now I would consider kind of classics for me, but we hadn't seen them.
Well, less that it was classic, but more it's so oft discussed.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah.
That Tim and I were actually pretty hesitant to do this at all, but I don't know, one of our listeners we're friends with was like, "No, but I don't know, it'd be fun to hear you guys talking about it." Yeah. So, you know who you are. This is for you.
Oh man.
So what do we have to say about? Well, first we got to rate it. Ugh. So I own it.
Do we really? Yeah, I own it too. It's like, what the fuck?
Per our rating system, Tim and I think both agree that it deserves all the praise.
Yes.
It's so good, Tim. I have I watched them all last year. I told you all 4 Psycho movies, and again this October, I just keep falling deeper in love with Norman and his foils and fables.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like it's inarguably brilliant.
Yeah. Why?
Oh my God.
Why exactly?
I mean, where do you even start?
Well, okay, if we're trying to cover new territory,
you know what?
like I can...
okay, yeah. I want to hear what you have to say.
We can try to just forego the impact it made discussions.
Sure.
You know?
I think that's fair. It's like we weren't there anyway. So.
There's so much out there. I mean, yeah. Yeah, we weren't there. It's essentially 2020, you know. Like this movie had its 10 years ago, its 50th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it feels like it's that old.
Yeah. So
right?
I don't know. I think from
a certain point of view,
what I'm more interested in is just sort of like the deeper thematic things going on.
So that's actually what I was going to say is like, if you're going to ask why it's so good, the first and foremost thing to me is just the actual story and storytelling of the story, right? Like, I'm sure that in lesser hands, you would potentially have, well, you certainly would have a lesser movie, but I think you would still have a pretty fucking good movie.
Yeah.
I think it would be really hard for somebody to get this story and not have it turn into something quite good.
I think why I think it's so good, why, like, if this is kind of our in summary review section, it's because I think the most terrifying idea, the most just sort of horrific idea or kind of wrong thing imaginable to me is a boy killing their mother.
Okay. I don't know that I've ever really like sunk my teeth into thinking about that.
Like there's a lot of stuff.
Like, I think a parent killing a child feels worse to me. Mm-hmm. But
that's that's essentially what Normo's doing to Norma is a form of torture.
Well, right.
But
I think that's what's so compelling.
I think that's
what you can't help but empathize with him.
The boy killing the mother, I think that emblemizes obviously the upbringing. There's already something wrong. Right. So that's just sort of, this is the end result of that. So this is sort of wrapped up in that for me.
Yeah, it's like the terror or the horror that somebody was driven to a point that necessitated killing their parent is so awful, and because it is so antithetical to what a parent is supposed to drive them to do.
And I think specifically I said, boy killing his mother, not kid killing their parent for a reason.
Right.
And what that thing the thing that's getting driven to for me as I think like what that represents, or the relationship boy to mother, and just sort of from the perspective is like the mother represents just, I don't know, it's hard to put into words, but just something like, all that is good in the world. You're one person that you can kind of trust almost even more than yourself, Or,
well, yeah.
In a sense,
Yeah.
Just in a sort of, I don't know, like deep, somewhere between biological and spiritual sense.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because there are times you actually make this expression fairly often in the episodes. It's a thing that I've noticed you refer to. Your point of view on mothers comes up, and you have a very strong sort of opinion, and like sort of what you're saying, like they represent, mothers in particular represent something really, really specific and like nurturing, and all of these sort of kind of things that you hear a lot, and you express that fairly often. I don't disagree with how I personally feel about mothers as well. But I often, when you're saying it, think to myself, there are people out there who feel very different about mothers than you or I. Well, and I'm always curious kind of to know, like, I don't think that we're saying something that is, doctrine, right? That is like, this is the way it is, that everybody should or does view their mother this particular way. But I'm curious because I think there is an alternative. I'm curious about what that alternative is. And then you get to a movie like this where you're like, yeah, this is a version of an alternative that is out there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, there's a reason that Norman has the relationship that he has with his mother in this story. And that particular story is not so unusual in the real world.
Yeah.
It is unusual, for sure, I hope.
Well, think of like...
But I think there's something really fascinating about seeing the construct that creates a different point of view on, maternal... whatever point of view. What did I just say? Did I say point of view twice in one sentence?
I mean, it's okay.
But you know what I mean. So I think that's fundamentally one of the things that is working really well. Now I'm already talking about what's working. Fuck.
Well,
but
this is
just from a basic standpoint of why this story is good and what the broad sort of summary takeaway of it is we're talking about a thing that is fairly antithetical to a lot of people's, or maybe a majority's, natural instinct toward child, or specifically male child to mother relationship.
Yeah.
Well, that was a long way around to get to that.
Well, yeah, and I guess just to sort of think out loud about it in more emblematic terms, like, of course I'm, this is me speaking, so I'm probably speaking to what deep stuff in me, but I'm trying to think in objective emblematic terms, at least, that the son to mother relationship is like the non-sexualized, kind of like a male female relationship that's just sort of universal or major. I don't know exactly how to define it, but it's sort of the, God, this is really hard to say.
Oh, I kind of think I know where.
But it's kind of like that. I don't know. It's like men need to, like the world should be about, uplifting women and right. Like everything that's wrong with the world, you could say is that male feminine or male female, imbalance.
That's right. Yes, I think that's really true and really important. Is that when you when you poison the impact that a woman can have on a young boy, the positive impact, allowing them to not be confined to these really strict masculine definitions that are out there in the world that drive a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
Allowing a feminine voice to, influence that young man or boy is super important. So when you poison that thing or the ability for that thing to happen, you get massive imbalance, right? And I think we culturally we're experiencing that a lot all the time. I mean, the good news is we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And so maybe we're becoming, or at least by talking about, we'll start to, it'll be a conversation that allows that development to be more healthy. Mm-hmm. Hopefully. But we see what happens when boys are told to not exhibit any sort of traditional, I'm putting air quotes up, traditional feminine traits into their persona. Mm-hmm. And it's bullshit. It actually makes for a shittier person sometimes. I don't mean to be mean about it, but if you're told your whole life that you aren't allowed to be emotional, usually you have a problem later.
Or
it fucks you up.
Not just, you don't mean necessarily emotional, but expressive yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And to summarize, because again, I don't know, let's try to transition here, because we'll get into this more later too, with where this appears in the movie. But this is, I'm not like a traditionally religious person at all, but I think a way that makes sense to define what the appeal and the horror and why it's so, I use this word a lot too, potent for me, is that act of the son killing the mother for, I don't want to say good reason, but reasons that make sense with how she brought him up, is just one of the most unholy things I can think of, if not the most.
Yeah, no, I can get behind that.
So
you're cutting, it's it's cutting another tether to, or a potential tether to something really healthy.
Yeah.
Depends, obviously, circumstantially.
Think of a puppy snuggling with its mom, nuzzling together, how that's the cutest, most wonderful thing in existence, kind of. Sure. What is the polar opposite of that?
The mom eating the puppy?
Some spiders do that. I don't know. It does get a little convoluted as far as maybe other sects of nature goes. But anyway,
You're right, though.
Yeah.
I imagine
what
bears.
To make a point, yeah.
I think there's a movie called
honestly,
Bear.
It's because we aren't parents, but I'm sure if we were and had the experience, I would probably used a human baby as an example.
Fair enough.
Let's get this summary out of the way, so then we can really get into it.
I mean, the
yeah, exactly.
Marion Crane works in a bank or some shit.
Yeah,
not a bank, but real estate or something. Something.
It's
something
real estate.
Is it real estate? Something
Phoenix.
shitty.
Yeah.
She's in Phoenix. She has to take a boatload of cash to the bank.
$40,000.
And, I guess, sorry, I should back up. Marion Crane is in love with Sam Loomis. But Sam has a wife, and he's paying alimony, and his life sucks. And he's in love with her, too. But they can't make it happen right yet. But, there's a glimmer of hope.
How can we summarize this even harder? What happened to our old days of these short...
I don't know.
Short summaries.
I don't know. Marion Crane has a problem. She fucking steals some cash and gets out of town.
Yeah.
and she fucking goes to the wrong motel.
Who happens to be run by none other than Norman Bates.
Yep.
Who
has a mom who is a real bitch.
he keeps alive in
We don't even know that.
But like,
Well,
what's
sure.
the story? What's the story here? What's going on? I guess.
Yeah. So Norman lives with his mom, and then his mom is a real piece of work, and she kills Marion, and then Marion's sister, goes looking for her, and lo and behold, we find out that Norman is his mom.
Yep. Great. We all know it. Let's get into talking more about what worked. I'm for that. How about you?
Yes.
Okay, good. And can you imagine someone listening to this who hasn't seen it? Maybe someone who hasn't seen it recently, or like,
Sure.
oh, I saw it once. I guess we have our listeners I've talked to who don't really like watching horror movies, but they love the stories and just kind of talking about them. So welcome.
Yep.
But you'll learn about it as we go on.
If I'm not careful, I'll literally just retell the movie beat for beat and tell you why every single moment is amazing.
That's why I stopped you. I feel like we're just going to end up going through the whole movie anyways.
Pretty much.
For what worked. So let's just get into that. How about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I don't know. Should we just try to go in order? Or are there any broader things? Like, because the broader things will come up as we're going.
Yeah. I think we have to just go in order.
In our experience watching it this last time, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll cover the big things as we do. How about that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I was noticed, I think, for the first time watching it with the opening credits. They're the famous like Saul Bass intro, animated, all that sort of horizontal lines motif. It's cool. It's great. I know that already. But what I noticed for the first time was that there's, rather than kind of black and deep grays like over white, it's the backgrounds and the lines it's using for the most part, they're a dark gray.
Yes.
Like at first I almost thought there was something with the screen where when I was watching it where I'm like, this looks like it's supposed to be brighter, but there was something like it's in a simple black and white sense that was pretty incredible, that limited colors, just how sort of there was a disconcertingness to how dark the colors were being used. Or I should say the shades of gray
right.
being used that I noticed.
I mean, surely it's purposeful.
Yeah.
I don't know what my takeaway from the opening. I mean, it's very pleasing and cool.
Yeah.
For some reason, and maybe it's just because I've watched it a lot and the next shot is the Phoenix skyline, I always feel like it is the buildings. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
It goes. Yeah. I know it goes horizontal and vertical, but for some reason, it's
something about it has that kind of big city on the move feel, but sort of subverted. Like This isn't what's that stock music Raymond Scott from like Ren and Stimpy. Oh, Ren, like that kind of stock music. This seems like the sinister strings only, Bernard Herrmann score. We'll talk about that here too.
Clearly.
But I don't know. I get what you mean. Like there is something, I feel like I've had that association too.
I don't know if it's that this, how do I say this? I don't know that it feels like the 60s because of this. Like this is my association with the 60s, or the 60s feel like this. Mm-hmm. Did I say that right? Does that make sense? Like, I'm like, oh, it's so 60s, but it's like, do I think that because this is my reference point for the fucking 60s?
Yeah.
Or is it actually very 60s? Or are those the same thing anyway?
I think that's just, they're both true and they're kind of the same thing.
But every time I see it, I'm like, ooh, the 60s. Cool.
Right.
I love this era.
What about the title itself? Psycho.
It's It seems almost what's the word? Pollyannish in a way? Is that the right way to put it? It seems kind of
I don't know the reference of what it actually means.
That's probably the wrong term. It seems pedestrian to me now. Like back then, Psycho, they didn't it meant. Dude, it was a new thing.
That will always be good. The best titles are the simplest.
Right.
The Omen, The Exorcist.
Right.
I could go on and on.
But it really is
Anaconda.
You son of a bitch. It really is. I don't know. It seems borderline cheesy to me.
I think it's brilliant. It's great.
I agree it is. I'm not saying it's not, but there is a part of me that I don't know what to call it.
The thing about the single word, the shortest titles, is that I use this word a lot too. They're just that much more loaded. You know, the idea Psycho, it conjures so much. It's a broad enough idea. And that's why this film is so as good as it is, because we can just endlessly talk about it. It's that deep.
I think what I'm touching on, or what I'm feeling, is that it is slang. And when
that's Psycho,
exactly, and that feels like a antiquated sort of insult. It feels like some fucking greaser in the 50s or 60s.
Wait, you mean like in Psycho 2 when he calls him a psycho?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And so I think that there are, I think it's working on both levels of it being a literal reference to what's going on in the movie, but also some sort of weird appeal to this
it's so funny you
thing.
Point that out, because I don't even think of it in that colloquialism. I just think of it as the movie. It has elevated the word.
I totally agree, but I've always had that weird sense in the back of my head of it's a little pedestrian. Is not the right word. I don't know what to call it.
What worked about it for you, Tim?
I mean that it has all of these things in it. I guess is just I think so weird and great.
Yeah, great. The opening scene.
Okay, Phoenix skyline.
Yeah, we are just gonna go through the movie because it's also good. I mean, what do you want us to talk about?
Well,
it's what worked.
So obviously, just the mechanics of the opening shots, where we're all sort of in the sky and panning the skyline and getting a couple different angles on the skyline. Obviously, there's sort of an Art Deco-y feel to the architecture of what is in those buildings. Do you know, in fact, if that is Phoenix at that time?
Yeah, he had the assistant director who, went on to work on all the other Psycho films, scout it.
Cool. So then you get this sweeping crane shot, which is fucking awesome, that cuts into a close-up of the windowsill. And then we move into the window seamlessly, which I was like, there's got to be a hidden cut here. And we looked, and there is not.
Yeah.
And then you're in the fucking room. The way, the lens they're using and the way that camera moves feels super weird.
Something I hadn't thought of before that I like so much about that is this is what the Stephen Rebello is the author of Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, and he does the feature commentary on the Blu-ray.
Oh, cool.
What he pointed out I loved so much was it gives that feel of this is just a story. This is just one of these windows we happen to be choosing, and that's in other movies and stories by that. Where are all these other psychos out there in the world that this stories could lead to?
Let's watch. Let's make a movie where we do the exact same camera move. We find the same building, same camera move, but we go one window over.
And it takes place in 1960.
Yes.
That's how to do an alternate, like a side quel of Psycho. Yeah.
Fuck, it'd be so cool. Anyway. It just sets us up for a really cool thing. We're spying on this quote unquote sort of tryst that is happening, right? And it's is this okay? I mean, the whole movie, just off of what you said about the titles, the whole movie lives in gray area.
Yeah.
right? Of like morality and sort of what's okay and what's
dualism.
not. Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're going to talk about for sure.
So right away we get into a conversation of something that's a little, what would you call it, lurid and...
Oh, I always feel like when I'm going to sit down to watch it that it's going to be kind of old-fashioned and hackneyed, kind of, but it's real enough, like they're kind of rapport, you know. It's great.
Yeah, he uses some cool language too that I've always liked. I'm trying to go back on the script here. What is it? He says one thing, laze around, which I love. Like, we're going to laze around here all day or something like that.
I don't know. I could really identify with that. I mean, that's, you know, it just seemed kind of universal.
That's like my
enough.
dream.
Yeah.
A daytime, like the person that you fucking love.
A daytime tryst.
A daytime afternoon delight.
Uh-huh.
Oh. And you just be like, fucking, maybe I'm not going back to work.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Right.
I've probably only done that like 3 times in my life.
And it's not too lascivious because, like, he doesn't want to be in his marriage, you know?
Right. So they're smart about that sort of setup. It's like, well, what it does too is it makes us go, oh, he's actually a good dude.
Yeah.
And we then, as the story progresses and Marion decides to go to Fairvale.
It sets those seeds of rooting for her.
Yeah, we go, yeah. Oh, yeah. Go do that, actually. We get where you're at.
Yeah.
So...
And then just to kind of keep it going to get, though, to the next main scene at the office, that if we're rooting for them based off of there, then we're really rooting for her more just because of the... Just talk of like lurid again.
Totally.
Maybe that's not the best word, but the rich dude who comes in.
Yeah, he's a lech. He's a piece of shit.
Lecherous. Yeah.
So I think the big takeaway and the brilliance of the opening scene is what you just said. The rapport. We like both of them immediately, and we sympathize with both of them immediately. We've got little clues like him being like, yeah, you know, I've got to fucking pay for, you know, my dad. He's not even around anymore, and I'm still paying off debts for him, and I'm still paying for my wife who lives halfway across the country. So we go, oh yeah, this guy's kind of like, not real thrilled about his situation, but he even cops to being like, you know what, all right, we can let's make it work.
Yeah,
with her, because she's being like, this sucks.
Yeah,
I'm getting old, and I don't want to I've never even been married.
Yeah, and
we go, oh shit, we feel for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into her office, and immediately she just gets hit with Dickbag McGee.
Yeah, flaunting his money around.
Ugh. What a piece of shit.
My favorite line, this is everything to me, when he goes, his first line, I think when he enters, he goes, it's as hot as fresh milk.
Yeah. Ugh.
Like,
you know how much I hate milk? I don't know if I've ever said this, but I hate milk. I hate milk so much that when I was a kid, I was over at Ian Lenny's, and Fran Lenny, his mom, they're from England, and Fran Lenny was like, oh, hey, it's like after a sleepover. I don't know why I'm telling you this, because I hate milk. And Fran was like, here, Tim, do you want a glass of milk? And I made it up a total bullshit excuse. I was like, oh no, I can't have milk. It makes me cough.
Great. My milk anecdote is I was raised on drinking lots of milk, like at night for dinner, always had milk. And I would
for dinner.
Yeah. And
this is psychotic.
I know. No. Okay. And so my dad, instead of saying it's time for dinner, my dad would yell, Ryan, time to pour the milk. And my friends always got such a kick out of that. No, but Tim, so like I had another friend who would go unnamed. I went over to his place for the first time. They had a refrigerator in their closet. In the garage. In the garage, like
I love garage fridges.
Right?
They're like basement fridges
with gallons of milk. And I'm like, what is all this milk doing?
They're
here?
bathing in
and
it.
he was just like,
you can't drink that much milk.
We just drink a lot of milk.
No way.
And granted, it was like this is outing them, 3 brothers, and the dad and the mom. And it was like, they said we drank this much milk. And
you can fit like 30 gallons of milk in a refrigerator.
Kevin Smith, before he went vegan, he said he used to drink like multiple gallons a day or something.
What is going on with the world?
Right?
Fucking milk is gross. We're not even supposed to drink milk.
There's a whole like video essay. Who is it by? It's the guy who does, I haven't seen it. Now You See It, I think is the name of the YouTube channel. But my friend was telling me about it, where he does this whole thing on like the meaning of milk in movies and like, that deep meaning of it. And then we get to it later in Psycho because we'll bring it up again then.
I know.
Anyway, to keep it going.
Okay, so Cassidy is his name. He's a real piece of shit. He's flashing smiles and
right, but what worked for you?
Well, first of all, it's so funny. I did a web series back in the day.
And keep these personal anecdotes down,
but
too.
Look, it's important.
Okay.
One of the actors that we cast, I never realized this, but I think he was doing Cassidy.
Okay. What worked for you about the scene?
His just gross sort of like thinks that he can just say what the fuck ever.
Yeah.
He's flaunting his shit around.
Yeah.
He might as well have just taken his dick out and flopped it on the desk. That's what the scene feels like to me.
Yeah, the way he sits on her desk is like so good.
And we get there. So what I really like about this scene is like we've got 4 people in the room and the sort of 180 degree line is set and we break it just a one time, which is an over the shoulder of Marion. It's sort of at her desk, like we're sitting next to her at her desk, and it's of Cassidy sitting on her desk. Yeah. It's the one time we break it and we're kind of underneath him. It's really great. But the rest of the scene is just a fucking gross, great setup to be like, yeah, no wonder she wants to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and as I said, we're kept up rooting for her. Pat Hitchcock is great in the scene.
Yeah. She's funny.
My favorite thing about this opening section scenes is the next moment when she does decide to drive away, asks to leave home early, and she sees them crossing the street when she's at the crosswalk. There's just something about their back and forth, like, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm talking to you listening. It's so funny, like her kind of, her sort of polite nod and then his response and then a kind of look from him.
Yeah.
And then her awkward. It's just like perfectly awkward. I don't know how to put it. I love it though. I love it.
Well, it's smart too, because like my first reaction is sort of in this viewing of it, really trying to look at everything, like scrutinize everything. My first reaction was like, who gives a shit? Like, so what if he saw her? He doesn't know that she has the money. Like maybe she's on her way home or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like you don't need to look at it any further than just what it is. He ran into her. You know what I mean?
I honestly had a completely different read on it.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I know you did. But I just felt like it's just clever sort of plot stuff.
Well, it does come back later, but yeah, my read on it is like the bank or her house was in a different direction.
Sure. But you're making that assumption.
Right.
Right?
But it's not like I'm thinking to get there. It's just
no.
It was for me that was implied.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so good about, we don't need that explanation because of the look he gives her.
Yeah, we know something's a little off
and
about it.
And that's really fucking great, right? It's like,
right, it could be any reason, but something is a little weird. It's
and
not just...
it plants the seed in her mind of like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like I didn't just sort of get out of here clean.
Right. How about anything specifically you want to say about the whole cop stuff and her getting away?
I actually think the cop sequence it's borderline my favorite part of the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think it's because I like so much the anxiety.
Oh, there's such like just right, because it's a level of anxiety where it's just at the it's that kind of anxiety where you're like, wait, there's nothing actually wrong. There's nothing actually wrong.
Right.
But that just sort of spins out of control in itself.
She just cannot fucking keep herself together.
Oh, my favorite part of that is when he like knocks on the window and she just tries to drive away. Whoa.
I love that.
Can you imagine if you tried to do that today?
Oh my God. And they picked just the right dude for that role. He's really big. His face is so big.
Yeah.
And and they put tiny aviators on him.
Oh.
Like they don't fit his face right.
I was going to say they were big old aviators.
They're not in relation to how fucking big his goddamn melon is. It's like a cinder block.
Well, it's probably the first of one of those kind of like close up right at camera face shots we get in the movie too.
Oh man, it's so good. But yeah, I also like the earnestness of the scene. She's right off the bat.
Is there something wrong with being in a hurry?
And she's like, well, am I acting weird? And he's like, frankly, yeah, you are. You're being fucking kind of weird.
And him saying, is there anything wrong, could just mean he's like checking on her to make sure she's all right too, you know?
Yeah, which he is.
It's the whole, man. It's great. It's the whole like novice criminal, you know, thing.
So I think what's kind of perfect about the sequence though is that at least I think this is true. It's true for me. There is an inherent anxiety to having an interaction with a cop, period, right? Just that.
Just because it's like, oh God, I've done illegal things technically, whatever. Like,
the number of times that I see a cop and I'm like, oh shit. I'm not doing anything.
Right.
I'm like, there's no reason to worry at all. I know this now, but man, when I was a fucking teenager, I mean, I used to get pulled over all the time as a teenager, I think just because I was a teenager, right? And in my town was boring and small and whatever. And so the fucking sheriff or whoever would pull me over and be like, what are you guys doing? We're like, we're driving around. Yeah. And it's sort of like she could have just been like, yeah, you know. But the fact that she's got a secret makes it so much worse. Yeah. And it's not even like, yeah, I mean, she's definitely broken the law at this point. So
well, it's great how, I mean, that scene's great, but talking about reaching a level of anxiety once we get to the actual car shop or car dealership, it's so anxiety ridden where it is rising and rising. He's just watching from afar, the cop.
I love the simplicity of that shot of him pulling up, doing a U-turn, pulling up and just sitting against his car. And it's like, I thought about this time too, like, just from a framing point of view, like what we're looking at, the background, like the world behind him is like an empty lot and a shit building. Like there's nothing really pleasing or interesting about it, which forces you to just look at him. He's center shot. He's like in the center of his car. He's leaning back with, I think his hands are sort of crossed in front of him a little bit. I think
they're on either side of, he's sort of spread like this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's just something, so he's just sort of waiting.
Yeah.
And that is fucking really intimidating.
And then how it culminates is just so funny because it's like now the cop's gone over there and they're all kind of approaching her and she just like speeds, like when she want to say something to them.
Everything about that scene is so fucking awesomely anxiety ridden because even the car salesman being this sort of like over chatty.
Yeah.
And like he gets flustered by her not doing, like he's like, oh, I never had the customer high pressure the salesman or whatever.
Actually, that's her memory of him or fake memory. Or not memory, but what the presumed possibility voice.
Oh man, I mean, all of that is just so fucking good.
Yeah,
and the fact that it all culminates with them kind of just walking toward her as she drives away.
Right. But you just feel that pressure when they're getting closer. Yeah. It's incredible. My favorite part, I like to talk about how this film is also, you know, Hitchcock in the way where it's a comedy too in so many ways. Like, I just think it's so funny and I love it how pointless it is that she does the car switch at all. If she was doing it to lose this cop, he's just there. So it's just so funny that it's like as soon as she says, I want to buy a car, and she's doing it, she doesn't want to, well, it'll make things worse if I stop doing it all of a sudden just because he showed up. Now I have to act like I'm just trying to casually buy a new car. It's
the constant the continuation of just bad decisions.
Yeah.
Like you're fucked. No, you made it worse. No, fuck, you made it way worse. You can't go back, or could you? And if you did, what would happen? Oh no, fuck. It's just that. And I think watching somebody make bad calls in an already anxious scenario just gets us primed the fuck up. Like I'm so already wound up by the time she gets to the motel that it's like clearly everything in the last 10 minutes of the movie was perfect.
My favorite, what I like more actually than all that stuff for kind of, saying our little favorite bits is what we kind of already touched on, is after that, when she's that whole sequence of her imagining the possible dialogue that's playing out between all these little side characters who are in the skin. Oh, well, she's usually a little late on Mondays, though.
Right.
Apparently that was actually Hitchcock reading those lines off to Janet Leigh off screen, too. Which is fun to imagine. But I think what that did for me that I love so much is it's rang so true as these are the thoughts that we're having. They seemed like intelligent enough, not to presume that she wouldn't be, but it just makes us sort of empathize with her that much more, just to be like, oh, this is the level that she's thinking at. Even though she's kind of been, screwing up pretty heartily here. Yeah. Like we can still relate to her because she's processing it in this way.
Well, and because this is one, we've talked about this before, and I've written a fucking movie that hopefully I'll make someday that is this literal premise. The ideas that you come up with and the stories that you start telling in your head about the possible scenarios, the anxiety sort of stories that you tell, and the fear that you create for yourself that is completely made up. In this case, it's not completely made up, but they're just imagined conversations. None of it's fucking real. It's all in her head. And it drives her to make bad decisions.
Right.
And I love that as a concept. Just the idea that you can fucking get yourself into such bad shape or into the hot water or whatever because you're being led by made up scenarios.
Well, Tim, what's happening, and it was ridiculous that it took me this, it was only in listening to commentary, watching these documentaries, that what it's doing is, this is her going a little mad sometimes. This is her being, she's the psycho too, where at the end of the scene, this is why I say it was so obvious, I never noticed before, is that indelible smirk that she has of that self-satisfied, I'm going to show these people smirk. Because she kind of ends on thinking of the lascivious the dude.
Yep.
That's the same smirk that, Mother makes at the end.
Shit.
Great, right?
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Well, and we see in the following movies this sort of continuation of that idea of like who is the psycho at any given point. Like we're all fucking nuts, or we're all
it's about to what extent.
Yeah. And how close we are to our being our threads being snipped.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get into the filming. I will say the filming of the rain and her having this thing and the anxiety around, for me personally, of like driving through rain and not being able to see, and how they shoot low to the ground as we're going on the quote unquote highway of the time. All of that feels scary to me too, in that sort of anxiety ridden way. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, it's dangerous. You can't fucking see.
Well, I love it because she doesn't even know, as we reveals in her dialogue, that she got off the main road, but you feel that in the way it transitions to the Bates Motel, where it really does this kind of appear like a mirage out of the darkness.
Yes, I know. It's
like out of place in time.
There's a weirdness too when you see it the first time. It made me think that it's on the wrong side of the road compared to how she actually does pull up.
Yeah.
But I have to go back and look at it. But I think that there's some purposefulness to this, like what you're saying. There's this mirage feel to it. Like it feels like it just is out of nowhere.
How about now? My favorite part of the arrival is and this is a sort of why it's so great in retrospect and how it's setting it up. But you see Norma, who's an old woman. That's all we know at this point, pacing in the window. Like it just sort of like throws out any doubt that like. I know we didn't want to talk about what it must have been like at the time, but maybe that's more a thing of a note.
It is,
but like,
yeah.
I guess I'm more trying to say kind of like I always know who Darth Vader is.
Right.
I always knew, who Mother was. But just to how it cements it that, oh no, this, okay, so there's an old woman pacing upstairs, okay. But what I love so much about it in retrospect is, and this is kind of discussed in that last scene, that Norman's life, it's not, because the sequels, it made me think of, okay, Norman is just when he reaches a sort of like sexual frustration or urge point, or that's what activates the mother thing. But no, it's actually an ongoing. He just he's keeping her alive.
Right.
I forgot about that aspect of it.
Yeah, it reminded me just of like what his life is with the context of all these movies.
This is normal. What day is it? Whatever night, Friday night.
It's
after
Friday
work.
night, and it's time to get Norma out and take her for a walk.
Yeah. And she just paces, probably listening, like, how she, in the sequels, we see that Victrola. She has.
Like, just the idea of that, knowing the context, is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I just love thinking that Norman, because we like Norman so much, I just love thinking that that's a part of his day-to-day.
Right. Okay.
That he's so in it.
Okay, just to kind of, because we're going to be going all over the place here to talk about like Norma and the room itself and just sort of the era that she represents and is holding on to, and those details of, like I said, the Victrola and kind of the furniture and what all that kind of conjures. It feels like, so Norman is preserving that too, like this antiquated thing because of his association of that with Mother. This is more of as Kane is just kind of so interesting about the son-mother relationship again, is that this to him represents perfection, his mother and this world and this house. And that's kind of actually what I maybe was trying to say more at the beginning is, what this is all emblematic of is it's about a loss of innocence. That's kind of like the deepest thing we can get at.
And preserving it.
Right. And it's why, Psycho 4, he burns it down.
Right.
So yeah, this is about, he's preserving, because with innocence comes what we recognize as like a true perfection. When we first come into this world, connected to that innocence that's when everything is okay. Your world is just this, if you're like, ideally doting parents or someone who cares for you, or just whatever world you've made for yourself. Or, if you're sad in Harry Potter, it's just whatever your favorite little thing you have in your closet is, or I'm just trying to say that, like, even if you're in bad circumstances, you can still have like a blankie that is, that represents. And this is Norman's blankie he's holding on to, his mother being alive, the house itself, the decor. And it's just that it is kind of, even in 1960s point, a kind of antiquated feel just kind of works for that sort of holding on to the past. Yeah.
I don't know what era that house is. Is it sort of Victorian?
Yeah, I heard that word thrown around, yeah.
But yeah, that in and of itself is an antiquated thing. And it represents a time of, I would say, what it kind of reminds me of is the house in Giant. Have you seen Giant? It's the one with Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean.
Maybe at some point.
It is representative of a time of excess, but like misplaced excess. Because like in that movie, they're oil kind of tycoon people, ranch people, and they build this Victorian mansion out in the middle of fucking nowhere, Texas. And it's like, that's their idea of excess and wealth.
Yeah.
But it's weird. It's super misplaced. And it's misplaced in this. It's sort of like, why is it there? Right? And even now, like, You go to neighborhoods like the Angelino Heights, you know that area? It's a bunch of fucking weird old Victorian houses. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And like some of them are super run down and it just feels weird. Some of them have been like redone. But there's something about that look that just is so specific.
They're ghosts at this point.
Yes.
They're like the Walking Dead.
Right. And so that, I think it solidifies this sort of feeling of like, where are we?
Yeah.
And like, are we in a time, is Norman living in just this arrested development time?
Right. As soon as we see the house, we kind of just go, oh, people are living here? Oh.
Well, and then we see him, she honks for him and he comes lumbering down like a sort of just
Didn't hear you
gazelle.
with all the rain.
And he's super young and buttoned up and like clean cut. And that, I think, it really is beguiling initially to be like, oh, that's the guy who came out of that house?
Okay, and this is our guy, Tim.
Right.
Anthony.
Holy shit, what a fucking introduction.
Perkins, right? Like he's, okay, if everything I said I stand by, as far as what this movie is greater about, but I think what this is also about, and sorry to bring it up again, but the impact it made is with Norman specifically as our son. In this case, it's not, how it was written in the book, a slobby, dislikable guy. It's not a monster in any ways.
No.
So if I think a way to define horror is you're pulling out a safety net from under people. And that's just what this film sort of did for audiences, American audiences then at the time.
And,
so
it really set up, the next 30 years of serial killers.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was all... We won't have to get into it, but yeah, just like that sort of a woman undressing before getting killed, even, But as far as Norman himself, what you just said, he's like good looking, just kind of someone we want to trust, likable, everyman. Anthony Perkins, he's so good, Tim. He's it's great because like. Something struck me about him when I was looking at him or like when I'd see clips of his other work. He at first, it just sort of out of context, it feels like, he almost feels like you see him acting or something, or he's almost so much. And I was like, no, he's like you see in Psycho when you're actually watching it in context. He's just one of those people and therefore actors who carries constant, just kind of outward emotionality.
Yeah.
That. He's always, at some sort of observational, emotional extreme. And there's, a lot of people who kind of carry that energy too.
He does.
Of that.
To me, he really feels like he's never, there's no off. There's a frequency of things coming out of him that feel like they are about to erupt out of him all the time. And he's kind of keeping them like tamped down.
Right. Well, like his stutter kind of speaks to that, right? But then I could see like the stutter, there's the part of me that wants to go like, oh, it's almost too, I don't know what, something. But then I realized, no, this is authentically him.
It's also so like specifically placed when the stutter shows up.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not just a thing that Anthony Perkins, the actor, was like arbitrarily throwing in as a character trait. Like it's happening at really specific moments of stress for him.
He actually decided which word he suggested he wanted the stutter and just said, I wanted, and on these words, I think it will work.
It's very clear that it was well thought out.
Yeah.
And fucking A. Because you can imagine a version of this where it is arbitrary. It's just a character trait.
Yeah.
And it would become too much, I think, very quickly, where we'd just be like distracted by this tick or stutter or whatever you want to call it, if it wasn't so specifically placed.
Yeah.
So, good job.
Bathroom.
Yeah.
Then he meets her, and then right before my favorite scene of the film, which is their dinner side chat. But leading up to that, though, Tim, I think I must have applauded and laughed so hard and just out of glee when he's right before he goes up to wrap the sandwiches, he says, with my trusty umbrella, he goes, I'll be back with my trusty umbrella.
Is there a story to this?
No, it's just so good. It's so
just
good, Tim. And
it's
why
like him picking up context clues without us, the audience, needing them.
It's Norman trying to be normal. That's what's so good about it. You see, it's like I'm someone who I have a really hard time relating or understanding like small talk. I just never kind of got it or felt like I could authentically very much do it, or it's hard for me. Or if it's small talk and we're talking about the weather, I'm really going to be like thinking about the weather, you know? And so this was just that perfect, it just sort of one of those lines that surprised me of just being so well written, you know, and something again, where it's just because it's older, you feel like you think, oh, you know, things aren't as good. No, but it's like just sort of a timeless line for me, just to show that like, to sort of keep up a polite rapport.
Right.
This is what his brain is doing, that like I have to say this is a thing that someone would say right now that I'm continuing. You just feel his like his thoughts sort of looping through his actions almost, of just like how is one act in this case, because he's so excited to have her there too.
Yep. He's picked the right room, which is a really nice moment too. Yeah. It's like when he says you can write down your address or the town you're from. Yeah. She pauses. She looks at the newspaper and sees that it says Los Angeles, LA Times, and she says Los Angeles, and he's got his back to her, and he's kind of almost looking over his shoulder, and he stops, and he was about to reach for like cabin 7 or something. Like he's reaching for another key, and he stops and then reaches for 1. And it's like something about this moment of like,
you got so excited. It's like, oh, he sees her as like,
maybe, like
as mother does, you're a whore.
Right.
You know?
It's like there's something triggered in that moment, you know, decide what you will, what it is. But like that moment is a moment for him to go, okay, it's gonna happen.
Keep that thread going. Sorry, I was still in the middle of saying with my trusty umbrella. I was wrapping up.
Okay,
I was wrapping up with, it just felt like the kind of line that, you know, you write because it's like, okay, this just feels like it's quirky for this quirky character, and the actor is going to, you know, make that bring that quirkiness to it. And it's just that what Anthony Perkins brought to it, how he delivered it, just talk about quirk. Like it just was so much.
Well, right. And I think kind of what I'm saying about the decision, the moment to put her in that room, leading all the way through to that, is they're kind of the bookends of a emotional scene that he's having with himself, where it's like once he makes that decision that like I'm putting her in this room so that I can look at her and that's going to trigger a bunch of shit. Now he's in that world for himself as a character, because it's like when you meet, it's the same shit that I sometimes have when I, you know, like a girl and I know that I'm going to go hang out with her, and I start to fucking like be awkward. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I just like, what's the fucking big deal?
And the more you think about it, the more
you say ridiculously stupid shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never said this in my life. And it just came out of my mouth. So he's like living this internal fucking life, that whole scene, like the bathroom thing, everything has a fucking thing under it for him.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because we're kind of going like, what's his deal?
Yeah.
Like, why is he's awkward.
And we're never not doing that, even after the fourth one.
That's right.
That's what's so good. So we get that he runs upstairs, and I forgot watching it, you know, after the sequels, how extended his kind of conversation with his mother was, like their exchange.
Oh yeah.
Like I just love it so much, that like, and just who she is, and just the thought that it's like him yelling this too. And then what after supper? Music? Like that's just the worst thing, you know?
Oh my God.
And then it comes back, what is it, in Psycho 3? He finally gets like his dance after dinner.
That's right. Oh
yeah,
my
Mom,
God.
music. What's wrong with that?
That conversation is a full page of dialogue.
Oh, between him and his mother?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So essentially a minute's worth of dialogue.
So then he comes back down, Tim, and I just think this dinner scene may be like the greatest scene ever, Tim. Like knowing the context too. this is the movie for me right here. This is the best the movie gets.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I'm with you.
It's so good. So it's
it feels like its own movie to me.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing. Like you could play this scene just as itself, like with nothing else around it, and it would be wildly compelling.
I was just curious it kind of starts where, he brings down the food and she kind of is, opens her room and is kind of standing there, arms crossed or whatever. And he gets all weird and says, let's go back here. It's less selfish, whatever. What is your take? Is she just kind of comfortable around him? Is she not? What is?
I think it's guilt. There's a reason I think this. Her first line when he comes back is, "I've caused you some trouble," and I think that sets up her willingness to go in and like sit with him. Is that she knows that
her face doesn't say that. Her face is more just kind of like,
but she
just kind of feels comfortable around him. It has something to do with that. I feel like this is just a dude where like I just can trust around him. He's so innocent.
Well, I think it's the combination of these things. He's so sort of effusive around her to begin with, and I think she thinks that that's kind of like charming or whatever. But she really is saying like, "I'm good. I'm going to bed. I'm tired." She kind of says this 2 or 3 times until, and it seems in the bag that she's done. She's going to bed. Until the conversation with his mother. And she listens to that whole thing and coming out of it and saying like, "I've caused you some trouble." To me, she's kind of going, "Ooh, sorry about that."
You're right. This guy deserves someone just being completely open to her, just to like show him that not all women are as horrible as his mother.
Yeah. So that's kind of what, like, it's hard to look at it without the context of the rest of the movie because we know what the fuck's going on.
Right.
But if you try and can just kind of go, where's she at right now? There's basically 2 main things going on. Well, 3, but A, she's had a long fucking day. Right? Like, she's tired. She's had a long day. But B, she's alone. And she has had a fucking rough day. And I think the idea of getting to sit down and have the sort of normalcy thing for just a second with somebody who is being nice to her is appealing. There's also a callback to the egg sandwich that is in the opening scene that Sam says, "You didn't even touch your lunch." She hasn't eaten at all in like 2 fucking days.
Right. That we've seen.
Right. Presumably not at all. Presumably that's why she has a fucking headache the day before.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's all these little sort of clues leading us to know where her state is.
Right.
So I'm right, with her this whole time. I'm like, I'm right with you.
There's a lot of significance, you're right, to her hearing the argument because it goes from who is this weird, creepy guy in this weird, creepy house in this abandoned motel. Oh, he's just like messed up because of this abusive mother. He just, God, like, I just want to talk to him, like, give him that.
Also, the conversation, the things that Norma, quote unquote, says are a callback to the conversation she has with Sam about like what it sort of means to be in a healthy relationship. And her saying like, what's the line about, oh shit, now I don't remember. She says he says you make dignified sound undignified or something like that.
Yeah.
It's something like that, right? It's almost like she needs to defend herself in this moment. Like she's just been basically called a whore by some random lady up in a house.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, fuck that, man. Like, no, like it shows she has empathy.
I like how that little switch of him going for like he was about to have his own dinner to then inviting her and then just not eating.
I know.
He loses, I think it's a comment, he lost his appetite because of a mother yelling
Yes,
at him. And
for
also,
sure.
he's just so excited again to have her and so nervous. And it just speaks so much to how lonely he is. I think this sets up why later, even though he has, once she gets killed, that we're rooting for him to at this point to successfully cover up the body just because of how sad and lonely he is. Like, we're feeling for this guy.
Dude, he has a line that is, there are a bunch of these little ones, so I'm not going to go through every one, but there is this one which I think is hilarious writing and is so fucking Norman. Like, that giving Norman lines like this really, really like solidifies him as just the best. So when he comes back with the sandwiches and he's about to go into her room to have them, and he sort of stops and he's like, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that. And he's like,
we talked about that, yeah.
Or it might be nicer, warmer in the office. He then says, eating in an office, too officious, even for me.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
I don't think he says too officious even for me. He just says too officious. Are you reading the script?
I'm reading the script. So
okay.
he does, yeah, I think you're right. He drops the even for me just as like too officious.
It's a bit
It's like-
officious.
yeah, it's just, he's such a fucking dork.
Yeah.
In the best way.
Well, it also, that's his favorite place. Like, it's not his bedroom. Like Hitchcock said in that trailer we watched.
right.
It's the back office. That's his place. And when his back office, when he says he hates, and they're talking about the taxidermy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, this is so amazing. But how he says he hates stuffed beasts, meaning like, and then, but not birds because they seem more passive when you stuff them.
Yeah.
Plug that into him being like a killer, and it's just one of those little things that makes us go, he's not so bad a person that he,
Right.
would stuff a chimp or whatever, like he says, or a dog, some people
Right.
do that. It's just like but birds he sees as kind of pretty, and also kind of birds representing, like, that's like a running motif in this, but kind of representing the feminine in a way, and like him viewing women.
The whole thing of
birds.
like, you eat like a bird, but actually that's...
But that's on him because he has, you could say is a feminine male in ways too. That's where he shows up as bird-like. Just, metaphor, you're like treated that he's
choosing...
stuffing birds and stuffing his mother.
The taxidermy, like just from a story point of view, like, what's the name of the author? Robert Bloch. That is brilliant, like, character and, like, theme setup.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the idea of the guy who preserves his mom is a taxidermist or is into taxidermy. That's fucking genius irony. But it's so good.
The level that gets me, though, is that he specifies it's just birds.
Right.
That's what puts it over to that brilliant edge for me.
It's so good. So good. Yeah, that whole scene is really amazing. His turn, like character turn in that scene, is very unsettling.
When he gets sort of defensive, when she suggests putting the mother in a institution. Oh, when people say somewhere, they always mean an institution kind of thing.
He's scared. He's scary in that
reminded
moment.
me of I called out, I think it was in Psycho 3, where really the only time he gets ever sort of confident and sort of isn't, have his little tics is when he gets mad and has to stand up for his mother. Yeah,
that's right.
So this was the example of that. It was just fun seeing, I can connect to the sequels, these true Norman traits. Just this sort of string, these lines came one after another, but when he talks about, if he wasn't there, she's kind of encouraging him to leave. And he goes, oh, if I wasn't here, he comes, oh, what would she do? Her fire would go out. What he's really talking about there, that's for me where I got that meaning of like preserving your idealized place, your little place of paradise, but that's actually keeping you back, is like, holding on to his childhood with doesn't want the fire to go out.
Yeah.
And then also that sort of, I don't hate her. I hate what she's become. I hate the illness. The idea of like, there's something really tricky. And I think that's where this conflict gets at, is she's we connect with her when she's saying, and she's right when she's saying you should get out of here, Norman. But then we also like feel, and in other cultures it's more common too. Like you're the kids, you live with your parents to take care of them. But like, I don't know, just sort of that, being able to argue that both ways, I think is a really interesting conflict that still, will be pertinent for years and years to come. He loves his mother to take care of her, but at the same time, he's got to live his life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this scene is the crux of who he is. Mm-hmm. And we get all the information we need. And it's pretty fucking upsetting.
Yeah.
And then he just sort of turns on a dime and it's back to like,
want to keep hanging out?
Yeah.
Well, what's so cool is Marion's end to the scene, though. She decides to return the money. She's deciding.
That's right.
She sits down with this psycho and decides, you know what? I'm not going to be a psycho.
So I guess we should. I mean, this has been talked about ad nauseum, so we don't really have to get into it too much. But this is really the MacGuffin sort of construct, right?
The stolen money.
The stolen money becomes everybody in the fucking movie thinks that the movie's about the stolen money.
Yeah, but that's what's cool, that it is.
I love it.
Motivating her being the psycho.
Well, what I thought about while we were watching it when it kept coming up and how it really is kind of beat, not to death, but it is driven home repeatedly that they all think that that's what it's about. It deepens, to me, it really deepens all of the characters, and it makes us feel like, or it tells us that they have a point of view, even though what they're talking about is not really what the movie's about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it gives us context to who they are as characters, because everybody else talks about it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the brilliance of the MacGuffin is the irony that it doesn't matter.
So to jump kind of way ahead, because this is on this topic, is when Detective Arbogast shows up, and like that super tense scene we'll get to more, but there's something so satisfying where in his mind, this kid Norman's knows something about this money.
Yep.
And then we're just like, especially if you've seen it before, like,
we've already seen him throw the money unbeknownst into the trunk.
Well, it's the satisfaction where he has he carries himself with such a kind of confident swagger, like, I'm gonna figure this Norman kid out. Yeah. But then just to have that just be so out the window at this point, it's like, dude, no, there's a lot bigger things going on to think about just in existence than, worrying about this missing money. It's just like Norman's going to throw all that out in the water, literally.
Well, and actually, to bring it into sort of what we were talking about potentially this doing by talking about this movie in 2019, it really, to me, points at, regardless of the intention, I maybe this was part of the intention, but it points to this idea of how sure people are about a thing.
Yeah, that's what's so satisfying to me.
Right?
And that's what I was getting at, is like when someone's so sure about something and we know it's not, that's kind of my favorite thing in the world. And
then to further that along, nowadays, how we need to talk about people's mental well-being, right? And that the way people act as if they know everything or they're sure about things is really just a device to ignore the underlying realities that are out there.
Right. Like, can you imagine what he was thinking when she runs out and kills him? Like, this is...
He's thinking, I fucked up.
but there's no context. It's like, it just is so, that's why I said what's so satisfying is his concerns of money. Like, this is so beyond any of that.
I wonder how much sort of catharsis there kind of is in a way to that.
Yeah.
I just is it part of why we are pleased by the movie is that there's these underlying things of like, yes, they shouldn't necessarily be killed, but they kind of had it coming by being just in a broad sort of character-wise. They're being presumptuous and in the context of a movie about people getting killed. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying it's justified in the context of the story, right?
I think Norman, it's his story, and that justifies it because he's someone who's so immediately emotionally deep that he just kind of brings us into the world of, like, as I keep saying, but there's stuff that's more important than money. You know, that's why I think that works that's why it's the cathartic nature maybe you speak of anyway. Yeah,
I guess also what it does too is just it deepens the character or any character to have somebody present the surface ideas.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Is Norman is such a talk about so much being underneath the surface. Right. That's why I think where he's bringing us into this whole other flip side of existence. That's not, Phoenix high rises, buying a car in LA, worrying about money and weddings. And
yeah, I mean, and I relate to anytime somebody comments about something to me that is really basic. I don't know a good example off the top of my head, but it's like if somebody's like, here's an example. Like if somebody says, why are you working so hard? And it's like, because it's important to me to work hard. You know what I mean? That there's more to life than just like skating through on the surface and just doing whatever. Like some people take pride in having character or like, things. There are deeper things that are more important to them than your bullshit surface ideas of how to get by life.
Existing to get to the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And so like things like that, it makes me immediately fucking on Norman's side.
Right. And I think just Norman is somehow representative of that as a person, and how he, what he represents is just, again, the window into that deeper side immediately, because that's just the level he's always existing and thinking on.
It's the difference between simplicity and complexity, right? And a lot of people operate on a very simplistic level. Or they expect everybody else to be on a simplistic level. And that's, for me personally, fairly off-putting. Like, don't be fucking reductive. Like, give people a little bit more credit.
Yeah. So how about this? Okay. Now we're kind of at the shower scene. Do you want to just pick your one favorite thing about it? Because I don't want to... If this movie's already been talked about a lot.
By far for me, my favorite thing is the shot on the ground with her face in camera, like after she's landed.
Okay.
And that, two aspects of it. Just one, the closeness and just starkness of her open eye.
Yeah.
But also the camera move that goes from there. There is the cut to the shower head, as you and I were talking about before we got on the air.
But it's essentially
the same shot. And then the camera moves off the ground through the door. There's a hidden cut there into the other room, and then looking out the window up to the house.
Yeah.
And that's all one shot. And we hear Norman do the like mother blood.
Yeah.
Blah. And we don't leave that one shot until Norman has come back down the stairs from the house. And the seamlessness of the actual cuts that then happen of like jumping outside of the motel, seeing him come around the corner, seeing him come through the door from back inside the room, all the way to seeing the body and turning around back into camera and putting his hand over his head or his mouth.
Okay, I know
that
the shot.
Whole sequence is just perfection to me.
Why?
Because it feels like you're in the fucking room. And it's the same reason that the opening shot feels good. It's because we are privy to this thing that we kind of shouldn't be. And it doesn't feel like we're spying on it so much in this case, but it feels like we're floating through this moment.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know. We're right inside of it.
Yeah. It's just kind of working well on all levels. Yeah.
The pacing of it, I think, is really important because we've just had the however many cuts it is, 30-something cuts.
Right.
40-something cuts, 35, 39. All of the freneticness of that.
52.
52, okay, it's a lot.
78 camera shots, 52 cuts.
Jesus Christ. So that's a fucking lot, and it's super intense, and then we float for the next, 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Its fucking pacing is just mind-bogglingly perfect to me. So there you go. That's mine.
My takeaway this time watching it, I felt like I'd always, before watching it, when you see the shots of the knife not stabbing her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of just kind of like you're missing, and there's this kind of this fracas that's just kind of messy going on between them. That always just felt me kind of, I don't know, just like dated or kind of weird for me, or it didn't make it work. But there was a shot that just for whatever reason, I felt like I had never noticed before in one of those, because they're all so quick.
Yeah.
But that just sold the whole scene for me in a way that hadn't been done before, which was just one of those quick shots is you do kind of more clearly see an actual struggle going on of her holding him back, of Marion holding Norman back, where you see that there is this struggle going on where it is haphazard the way. So rather it feeling like a court sort of like skirting something or trying to trick the audience, the scene took on a new context for me that I hadn't picked up on before, of just like, oh no, the knife is missing because she's like, a bunch of times because she is like pushing back. Yeah. So there's this one shot in there. It's kind of just overhead where like you see just kind of clearly her pushing him back, and then him just clearly kind of missing, but like just kind of almost like how he is at the end of the movie. You know how like when we see him in the clothes and he gets grabbed from behind and he's just kind of like, he's like holds his arm out straight and his face kind of holds this contorted thing. Like he just gets in this weird state, you can tell, where it's almost he's kind of moving as staccato like as the cutting of the scene. So just this little quick shot just happened to do a lot for me in it this time.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then kind of this moment is when we get the protagonist switch too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I know a lot of people talk about this as being so, I don't know, unusual or groundbreaking or whatever. It just seems like the story to me. It's always it never felt like, holy fuck.
Well, I mean, historically, it is groundbreaking as far as like, having this, everyone thinks he's going to live to the end. Like, there's no doubt about it when you're sitting down to watch that movie, as far as, where American cinema is at in this point. I guess, she is going to live to the end. She is Janet Leigh. She is our hero. Then the heroes don't die. Yeah. Talking about pulling the rug from underneath you,
Yeah, I think it's
hard. Also, it's the safety that a bathroom and shower used to hold for people too. This was a safe space. Everything's getting, upended here.
Yes. It's why we should. That's right. The vulnerable spaces in the world, or that we perceive in the world, are the ones that are best suited for horror films.
Yeah. But you're right. Now it's like,
your bed.
It's the inevitable story. Yeah. That's what we see it. So this was a reference I'm referencing something in a reference. I forget what I was looking at, but they referenced Slavoj Zizek's reading in something called The Parallax View, I guess.
I've heard of that.
Okay. They are uncanny doubles of one another. Their separate stories are complementary and cyclical. So this is the quote: Marion's world is the world of contemporary American life, whereas Norman's is its nocturnal reverse. So if you have like Marion coming from this one, the typical American life, and she's now entering this world. Now it's this nice handoff from the one world to the other. Now we're fully in Norman's world, and it passes the torch. Like if you're turning a coin over, is how I think of it. Like, all right, well, once the coin gets, vertical on its side, that's when the murder happens. And now we're fully, on this other side. It's cool.
Okay, yeah, that is a cool way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to step back from it because it is the movie.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to not, to like...
In things of note, I'll get into more of just kind of like reactions at the time and stuff
I'm sure
like that.
People were flipping out. What the fuck?
So the movie, it just kind of gets into the detective stuff. Oh, Norman's trying to hide, he's cleaning up. There's kind of this extended scene. What do you make of all that when it's just kind of prolonged him cleaning and trying to hide the evidence?
I think the coolest thing about that is that you go, well, right, because if you were watching this for the first time, you think his mom did it.
No,
Holy
but I'm just
shit.
wondering,
Okay,
Tim, what worked about it for you?
I just love it's now the handshake is given to him to be in anxiety land. Mm-hmm. So I think that continuation of one person's anxiety into another's is just... It's unrelenting in a way. It's just like...
Right. And we kind of set up, we're fully rooting for him to not get caught at this time.
I know, right?
With him.
Yeah, so like... I think that's really what... Yeah, it's the thing that I like about the movie the most. It's that the anxiety stuff is just so... it gets me wound up and just constantly in the movie.
For some context, how people are reacting to that. So in the things, now I'll get to more, but because it's this moment, the guy who gives the commentary, the author on the movie, and he always refers to his experience seeing the film in theaters for the first time and not forgetting it. But that moment, he heard some woman say, like an older woman, it sounds like, "Oh, he's such a good boy," like cleaning up after his mother, like covering up for the murder.
Amazing.
But more that there's something about like that Americans have time, especially of like a clean bathroom and just sort of keeping everything as clean as possible. So just sort of that really helped them identify with Norman. Like if they weren't already rooting for him, the fact that he's cleaning this way, they're like so rooting for him not to get caught.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, there was one other thing I was going to say about the anxiety. Oh, for the rest of the movie, Norman becomes... he continues to do the dumb anxiety things that Marion did for the first half of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, neither of them are good at being criminals.
They suck at it. It's awesome.
What's fun is when you get the luck on their side moments that we talked about in other episodes.
So in a way, this analogy or the thing that you were saying about the coin, it really is... they are the same character. It's like if you look at the movie... Oh, man. If you look at the movie as them being one character, then it doesn't feel like such an abrupt thing.
Yeah.
It's just a continuation of depicting or experiencing somebody in trouble.
Exactly. It's just such a brilliant handoff. They're like running the same race and he has the baton now.
Oh, my God. When fucking Arbogast gets there, Norman is a mess.
Yeah.
He sucks. He says he fucks himself so many times in a matter of like 45 seconds.
You kept yelling like, "Norman, you messing this up.
You keep fucking saying dumb shit. So like to me, I don't know why that's so exciting and pleasing, but it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's being caught up in his anxiety and like there's just a fun kind of when you're, I think also, related to the cop, he's not a cop, but it's still that sort of investigative level where it's like, even more so than a cop, a detective, it's like, no matter what words you're saying, we're kind of obsessed with like, are they saying the right things or not? Because he can be as nervous as possible. And like by the law though, like he hasn't admitted anything, he's okay.
Right.
But it's so obvious. And that's why it's so satisfying when he goes like, oh, actually, even, it's like, even though I just said I don't remember anything and she didn't come by. Oh, wait, I do remember actually. It's coming back to me. Oh, and we actually ate together. Like, like
yeah, it's like, oh fuck, you forgot that.
Oh,
like
the sandwich.
incriminating.
Quick side note, because I want to follow up from when we talked about before. Remember when we were like, connects to the milk again too.
Oh god, yeah.
Remember when we were trying to remember what kind of sandwich did she make?
Oh yeah.
Right, and then it turns out what he offered, and we were both like, it's something weird. So what we were connecting to was that he just says, I was gonna have sandwiches and milk, nothing fancy. So it was the milk thing was weird.
Yeah,
not
that's
the
the combo, right?
It's that nothing. But then I was paying very close attention and looking at hearing them talk about it, what was on the plate, just so we know. Maybe this is more thing of note, but I was excited to report back to you what the sandwich was.
Me too. I'm hungry.
We see her taking a quick bite with a fork of like a piece of meat.
Yes.
So there is like a little piece of ham there, I think it is, or turkey.
Doesn't she spread something on it?
She spreads butter on a single slice of bread and then puts a slice of cheese on it. So after having a bite of like ham or whatever, she then is only just having a cheese and butter open-faced sandwich. Milk on milk on milk, right?
Listen, I can't, begrudge anybody eating bread and cheese because that's basically my diet.
I mean, it's funny you're like have such a milk and cheese aren't that different, Tim.
I know, but God, milk is just real gross to me.
Yeah, but it's like
I know, it's just like liquid cheese.
If you watched where cheese came from in reverse, if you watched milk or cheese happen in reverse and see that coming from milk, you might feel differently about it.
I don't want to think about that at all.
That's called cognitive dissonance.
Thank you. I'm full in.
I loved the we haven't mentioned yet. Well, it's because we haven't gotten to her yet. Really, Vera Miles as Lila Crane, but specifically, like we both kind of noted watching it. Oh, she really is the same character.
Yeah.
Like there was something about when
that.
watching the sequel, how she almost feels like, oh, whoa, like calm down, like you almost are like, but. Sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like, because she is justified in it, but her
100%.
character is like, she's super, super assertive.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I love that when he goes, oh, well, something, maybe I'll believe you. I don't care if you believe me or not.
Yeah.
Like,
she's great. I mean, fucking A, man. I mean, this movie must have been just mind-boggling for like every dipshit misogynist. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, it probably still is.
Right.
People must have been like, oh, boy, I fucking hate these women.
Yeah.
It's, having these here's what it is. Breaking the norms, no pun intended. I know you love a pun. Breaking these norms of how the movie's supposed to be, how characters are supposed to act, how genders are supposed to, be in this era, in a fucking movie that was this big, is fucking the shit.
Yeah.
It will stand up forever.
Let's keep on why it's the shit now still.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, her and Sam's rapport.
Who later they become the item.
Yeah.
So it's so funny. It brought new meaning to at the beginning of the movie when he's like, oh, and then after dinner, we send little sister to a movie and you and I stay. It's like, dude.
Sam's all about that married life.
Yeah.
That's what tragedy does to you.
It's pretty great though. Like them getting on the hunt too after Arbogast gets it. But there's, I want to talk about Arbogast's death, of course, but you were saying, there's something really satisfying about Arbogast and his scene, of just that tension there. But if you're looking at it as an escalation after Arbogast dies, it's like that escalation just continues in that really satisfying horror movie way where when he's then talking to Sam and it's even more tense, where like whatever sort of
when Norman's talking to Sam.
Yeah, when Norman's talking to Sam. And it's just sort of again that talking with the detective Arbogast scene. Mm-hmm. But now it's just the stakes are even higher.
Way higher.
And you just see Norman ticking that much more because of it. It's just, I really love that escalation.
The things I really like about the Arbogast stuff I guess, and the continuation later when Sam and Lila are there. It's all daytime. And there's something really nice about doing this back and forth. Like the first, act, I guess you could say, of the movie is kind of daytime, and then the beginning of the second act into the second half of the second act is all kind of nighttime, and then we jump back into daytime.
It gives me the feel that nice. That this motel and house are kind of always a ghost town. It's not just a creepy house at night. It's just this kind of,
nobody's around.
Yeah.
So the Arbogast stuff, I don't know what my big takeaway is. I mean, his character is just...
Well, how about his death? That's my favorite horror moment, because we all know, unfortunately, at the age, the shower scene when you go into the movie. So I remember, after not having seen this film for a long time, I'm sure I watched it middle school, high school or something, but then it was in college. I went to a double midnight screening back when I could stay up for midnight screenings of Psycho and Freaks at the Del Mar, Midnights at the Del Mar in Santa Cruz.
Nice.
And I did not remember, Arbogast's death specifically. Now it's just like one of my favorite things. But the moment it became my favorite thing was when, and we've talked about the scene before. I know it's one of your favorites too. You're listening too. I'm sure it's your favorite too. It's when we see the overhead shot of Mother coming out. It's just perfect. It's like the fact that we don't see her face or, his face, whatever, it's so disconcerting and creepy, because we see everything else. We see the physicality, but there's something really haunting about not seeing the face of the killer. And the suddenness too.
It reminds me of just how fucking genius Hitchcock is. 'Cause somebody else may decide to shoot that scene from a totally different angle, and it would be fine. You still obscure the face and do all the things that it's doing, for what it needs to do. But putting this really, really top-down high shot shows and with the type of lens, it shows us in really, really simple terms how high up we are from down the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
It shows us before we know it, the trajectory of where he's going to end up. Mm-hmm. And so you have this context of the second the hit happens, we've already really established from this wide angle that he's at the top of these steep stairs and that he's fucked.
Yeah. For me, it's not, how it's shot.
I think it's just simple leading of our brains.
For me, it's the timing I love so much, of just the suspense of that feel of sort of looking around a house, and we're almost sort of feel safe with him because he's kind of confident and just thinks maybe there's an old lady there or whatever. Oh, yeah. So
it's him being sure of shit.
It's just that feeling of so suddenly, so out of nowhere, there's all of a sudden an unstoppable force coming at you. You just feel that coming at you. And you can't stop it.
It's only 4 steps, but it's covered so swiftly.
Moving so swiftly. Exactly.
Bum, 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 bum. It's
a little more than that. It's
it's so good.
Yeah.
It's very effective.
And then, of course,
the weirdness of him falling backwards is brilliant.
We've both geeked out about that shot before. Yeah. It's apparently he's on a chair in front of a screen or whatever. Yeah. But just I don't know why it's so good, Tim.
Well, what sells it for me, honestly, more than the actual shot is the cut to his feet stumbling backwards at the angle that they're at. So it's his heels are hitting the tops of the stairs. Yeah, for 2 or 3 stairs.
You get the feel, maybe that's it. You get the feel of you're trying to keep balance. You keep almost keeping balance. Because if you are falling that way, it's you could feel it. It's almost sort of the effect of like when the shots of where you're hanging on a ladder and then you go finger by finger falling off. It almost feels like that in a way.
Well, yeah, it feels like you're fucking falling.
Yeah.
Like the composition of those shots and the setup of the action.
The look on his face too. It's just, the context again of just like his whole purpose, let alone just mind being blown, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, and I also love that that's not the death, right? Like he's not killed by the swipe or the fall.
yeah.
Like he's killed by Norman jumping on top of him, and
Whether he would have survived that fall or not, Norman made sure he wasn't going to survive.
Well, and I also like that we don't. I believe we cut with the knife in the air. Norman
I
pulls
think
it
there's
up.
a first one, and then it gets
okay, that
pretty.
might be, yeah.
There's like a first one or two, and then it kind of fades pretty quickly away. And then I think just the other kind of when watching it, the other kind of moment that stood out to me, in this whole section of before the ending, was Lila once they get to the motel. I love that's both of them getting there, and I love when they're like, I won't be able to shake this feeling unless we go there and look for ourselves. And then once they're finally looking around, and we've already talked about when he's talking to Norman, but when she's going up, and it's that of cutting back and forth between her going up and the house getting closer.
It's amazing.
And having that be like, 3 or 4 shots on each
At
seat.
least. It feels like
yeah.
forever.
Well, three
I love
or
it.
4 shots each of as far as the house and her, like getting closer and closer. Like the house, we've already kind of touched on it in a way where clearly it's a character in itself and is emblematic of so much. But just to be on this side of the hill versus the staircase and creeping up to it just sort of all of a sudden gives it a new kind of sinister presence for the first time.
There's one little sequence that we've jumped over.
I know, it's going to see the cop.
Well, that for sure, yeah. No, there's one shot that I love that is it very well could have just been a throwaway. But it's when Sam has gone to the motel for the first time to check on Arbogast and then comes back, and Marion is waiting for him. She's in the back of Sam's shop. He's like he owns a hardware store or whatever it is. She's in the back of it, and the back room is lit, but the front room, the actual store, is dark.
Oh yeah.
And she walks from from the light into the darkness and stays in shadow as she gets into the foreground. Comes into like maybe a 2-shot-ish. It's like a medium close up, let's call it. And then Sam enters frame, and they turn in a way so that both of them are in profile talking to each other. The architecture of that and the lighting of that is...
I love it anytime you can't see people when they're in shadow. It's so good. I don't know why.
It's amazing, but
it's bold.
It is kind of just an information scene, so it's just a lesson in being like, you can make this worthwhile visually. Like way worthwhile. It's so cool to look at. And then you get the information and you're off. But like, it's fucking amazing. Like, please don't just put 2 people talking to each other in a well-lit room. It's
right.
really
or like
boring.
shot, reverse shot.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But yes, so then this whole sequence of the plan.
Yeah.
And they come up with it pretty fast. And I love that shit. I love
I'll
a plan.
pretend I'm sleeping. Da-da-da.
Yeah. Her like walking away. I'm like, bitch, take your fucking shoes off. You got heels on and you're on the fucking planks of this motel. Come on. He's gonna hear you.
Right.
The moment that they get out of cabin 1 and she starts to sort of slink her way down the other direction, and Sam turns toward the office doorway and we pan with him, and Norman's like fucking right there.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, can I help you? Or whatever he says.
Right. That was
so good.
Yeah.
And then they have their little chat.
We had a fun reaction, I remember, at that part.
I love it so much.
So then once we finally get her snooping, I do love her when she's snooping around Mrs. Bates. It's just so like I love how she's assertive, and I like people like that. But then I do also have a lot of qualms kind of with overly assertive people or naturally assertive people of kind of, association with almost arrogance of
I can
what
see
you
that.
said about actually exactly what you were already saying about assuming what you think is true.
Yeah.
So to have her be like, but this was so good, I think, because we're almost kind of relating to her, where it's like, well, she's just an old woman. Like, if I'm just polite, like, nothing's going to be bad. Like, if I explain,
she even says that.
Right?
She literally says, "I'll be fine. I think I can handle a sick old lady."
Right. And well,
yes.
but not only that, like, no matter who it is, you think, okay, like, even if there's an initial, "What are you doing in my house?" There's an emergency going on.
Right.
I wouldn't be doing this, ma'am. This is my name. Like, you I'll deal with it. I'll handle it.
Yeah.
So
Cooler heads will prevail.
Right. So to have her going in with that assumption, and then obviously that getting very much usurped.
Well, I mean, Norma's head is the coolest of the heads.
Yeah.
The fire went out.
Right. If we keep saying how confident Norman gets when he's in angry mode, oh my God, like, he's probably only his like full self, or he is a full person when he's Mother, you know?
And I think, this is essentially stated at the end by the doctor. But anyway, before we get to that.
No, is there anything else in that last sort of sequence of then once we finally get the reveal?
It's all pacing to me. The pacing is just fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty perfect.
Like when Sam,
it picks up at the right pace.
That's right.
Yeah.
The little tussle and Sam getting knocked out, and like, Norman coming after Lila and her hiding, like that whole thing, finding the basement.
Yeah.
Like just how that plays out. Like there's really nice kind of slow moves into quicker sort of action, into slow moves into quicker action, and then like the save of the beats of her turning the chair around to seeing Norman, to Sam grabbing Norman. To me, that is just played out.
Chair turning around with Norman, you mean with
Norma?
Corpse?
Yeah, with the corpse, right? Like the chair turn too. the unnaturalness of that chair spinning around is so fucking good.
I just love how the corpse looks. Like, seeing it first time, it is horrifying.
It's gnarly. Just
because it's like, there's something, not just how it looks too, but there's something so horrific about the idea of, it's not just it's not a taxidermied person, even if it was to an extent.
The body is,
the body or whatever, like, it's being held together in its taxiderminess. But just that in Norman's psychosis, like, you have it explained kind of in the sequels, where it's like, I just saw her as getting older.
Right.
But that he's keeping it up. Like, why even bother dressing her, honestly, Norm? But it's just that he's, I think what it represents is that, we're talking about holding on to this other time, this innocence is just emblematic of holding on to it so hard. Yeah. Like, he's something that should normally horrify someone, is he's just talking with her,
Yeah. Well, and we forgot to mention him carrying her down to the cellar.
I mean, I didn't forget.
Well, we just haven't mentioned it. Like, I just love that we're seeing this. It pushes, knowing the end and watching it, and then being reminded that, of how well constructed the little clues are. Yeah. Just, it's so fucking pleasing every time you get one. You go, oh, right, fuck.
Anything else before the very last scene of the... Or I guess the two last scenes, everything at the police office.
So the two other things that stick out just visually for me the most are Norman by the swamp, the car going in, and the moment of it not necessary. Like, there's the hesitation. It sort of stops sinking for a moment, and we see Norman stop and kind of go, "Oh fuck!" Yeah, and then it starts up again. It's just apparently one of my favorite
the audience
things ever.
Was in a sort of nervous laughter, biting their nails, uproar.
Yeah. I love it. I love that so much. And just the look of him the second time he's just out there by the swamp after presumably he's put Arbogast's car in the swamp. Him just standing there eating the fucking candy corn, dude, is
him eating the candy corn.
What more could you ask for?
Right?
I need a fucking painting I'm going to call an artist who does like freaky, gothic-y, cool, dark shit.
Find someone good on Instagram, I'm sure.
No, there's a guy named Llewellyn who is fucking amazing.
What do you want?
I want him to paint Norman standing there with the candy corns. Like, I want that, but I want it to be kind of the, you know, the final shot of Norman that gets a little bit of the skeletal thing. Oh, I would pay 18 doll hairs for that.
Dude, give an artist more than that for painting something for you. What would that buy?
1,800 doll hairs.
I was going to say that buy him half a canvas or her.
Right.
Like,
oh man, it'd be so good.
I'm just offended for all my artist friends out there, Tim. Oh man, that'd be worth $18. I'll pay this person whose work I love $18
for a print.
Oh no, but you just said it was a commission, man.
Oh yeah. Why
Let's hang it right.
Why you gotta get on me?
Just because
Just making up a number.
Sorry, because I was, as I said, offended for all artists out there. Like, worth $18. Hang it right. Hang it in here for our office.
It in here. I'm nailing it to the fucking ceiling above my bed.
So that'll be really popular. This last scene, Tim.
Yes, the 5-minute scene.
It's almost kind of infamous now. It has this reputation of just being the diatribe, the information dump, the exposition dump, in a way.
Yeah.
I was expecting that this would be my, like, I like it, you know? And I was expecting this to be my kind of like mixed one. It worked and it didn't work, and would be the one thing to talk about and what didn't work. But something about watching it in the context of all the movies, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like I felt this in the room when you and I were watching it, but we were like hanging on this guy's every word, like in a way that I never had before. But this felt like it was not just the end to this movie, but the end to all of them.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? After this, it's sort of almost like the end of Return of the King. Like, you want it to have that many kind of, you know, the ending to be as extended as it is. It felt like after watching this big psycho epic of all these movies, like it gave some kind of just nice come down catharsis.
Yeah.
And just anything he said was interesting because it was relevant somehow. But not only that, but I think what I'd argue now is that this is it actually it serves to say, like, okay, yeah, we know, thanks to his explanation, like what happened, like literally, like what were the physical actions, like in sort of terms, why, you know, basic psychological terms, he, you know, split personality, blah, blah, blah. Like, and that almost kind of makes us want to go, and almost kind of, I think, does in a sort of sneaky way make audiences go, reach that comfort level of, oh yeah, so we know what happened now. It's just this. But really, like, we still don't know how or why sort of this phenomena, like, almost happens at all. Like, we have some sort of deep understanding that it has to do with trauma or abuse or whatever, and just how, you know, these specifics. But the point is that they're beyond our understanding still in some kind of way. It's not graspable. Like, as much as he explains it, it's not just like you can actually, okay, great, we've learned everything we need to know about Norman, let's close the books on it, you know, even though it almost has, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of when people say it's just an information dump, it's ruined.
I think it's more emblematic of a lot of what the movie is doing, which we've talked about, which is people saying, I know what's up.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's counterpointed by Norma immediately talking through Norman sitting there, and being like, well, I want to talk they about think that. They're going to get away with it, kind of thing, or whatever. But that, I think the information dump, or whatever you want to call it, is more of that thematic thing of men saying we know what's up,
right? And it's not, because it's information, but it's not. That's why.
Yeah. Like, it's a guy fucking jerking himself off and being like, yeah, it's this.
Well, and he does, the performance is so good there too, because he does give it in such a way where it's kind of like, there's this undercurrent of, it's like this, and it's kind of, this is like there's a confidence to it but yet at the same time, like we can detect what we're saying already,
there's like a bullshit meter.
Yeah,
going
exactly.
On. It's like, I mean, we even don't we cut to Lila and Sam? They're in the room with them.
I forget.
I think they are. And there's a moment where I think they both kind of sit back a little, like,
oh yeah,
almost to be
Someone
like,
does.
what the fuck? So, I think it's a worthwhile scene. It is. I timed it out just because I was curious. It is almost exactly 5 minutes from them starting that scene to the cop coming in and being like, hey, he's saying he's kind of cold. Can we give him a blanket? And then the fucking guy, the psychiatrist or whatever, he does the smarmiest little like, yeah, you can give him a blanket. He like gives him this like weird like go ahead.
Sure, give him a blanket.
Sure.
Okay, now that ending.
Yes.
It's so good.
It's pretty sweet.
I think what struck me new this time is he, especially after, watching the sequels, is like, oh, now we aren't looking at, for the first time ever, kind of, we are looking at Mother through Norman. Like when you're watching Norman sitting there, we aren't watching him. Like, I don't know. I just sort of always had this, since Mother, we're only hearing in voice. Mm-hmm. We, I think it's just because, like we said before, his performance is so good. Just picking up on that, this is him performing as like, the fact that I just said we haven't seen it at all before. This is him performing as Mother. It was just something really like satisfying yet like really disconcerting about that.
Yeah, I think for me at least, there's an aspect of sadness for Norman in this moment where it's like,
but there's no Norman in the room.
Exactly. Like the physical body of Norman is there and gone.
Yeah, and that's what's so really interesting too, is because her dialogue is like, it's that poor Norman, like she's talking as if, like just sort of our sense of, well, how does this even work in their sort of physical reality mind of who is where at any different point? Oh, we just don't understand. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I think that's that thing of her having taken over is fucking tragic as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, we talked about that in the second one a lot, where it's this sort of, this is more of a tragedy of him trying to stave off the Mother persona coming back and causing shit.
And I think if we can identify, like what I said earlier with Marion's inner imaginings of everyone talking about her stealing the money, it's, and that makes us like really sort of empathize with her, put ourselves in her shoes. We almost do the same thing when it's that interior monologue of like, oh, I'll trick these guards by this woman, I wouldn't even swat a fly. A famous line. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, that's, I could see myself having that, like, I don't know, I don't know. We catch ourselves with not in that particular situation, but kind of saying, thoughts like that to ourselves. You know what I mean? On a certain level. Yeah.
God.
Like when duping people or whatever.
It's eerie as fuck.
Yeah. It is.
I love that. I love leaving that and then the 22-year later jump now. Because remember, initially I was sort of like, what the fuck? They're letting him out?
And I was saying, dude, it's 22 years later.
Right. But I love, because of who we know Norman to be and like his, I don't know, his plight, I guess. Mm-hmm. That it's almost like, I'm like now in the context of all of it, like so happy that he got out for him. I mean, it's like you want to root for him to be well. Yeah. Because of all this shit. Right. Everybody's fucking with Norman. Right. These motherfuckers. Norman got fucked with. Yeah. We watched 4 movies of Norman just getting fucked with nonstop by everybody.
This is why, again, I'm glad in all these movies, any moment where just luck is on his side, whether it's like the cop in the third one not seeing the body in the freezer, like
Yeah. It's such a good duality too, because I'm not saying that Norman is let off the hook for killing people, because he's not. But
he's not killing people.
You root for the goodness in anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've certainly had people close to me that had really major problems, and the things that drove those problems, a lot of the time I would have this feeling of like, God damn those things, not God damn this person for the bad things, that the outcomes, that I would always feel like, oh man, I can see the actual person without all that stuff that has been kind of lumped onto the person. Without all that shit, that person is such a fucking great human. And you love that.
Yeah. It's why you were saying like, oh, Norman throughout the movies.
Right. So it's pretty compelling to create a character like that.
Yeah. But it's just that, it's that too. It's like that gray area or more sort of that, like it's another word appears a lot in our show, the paradox of like, well, we're supposed to, he is the killer, but he's not. Where do we place the blame? How do we place the blame? It's all his upbringing. Or also, is it not? Is it biology? Because we fault someone because of their upbringing or some sort of, something embedded in them, like whatever.
I mean, to me, the biggest takeaway of just this conversation is the idea of how flawed an attitude of certainty is in life. Whenever somebody starts saying it's this, or I know the answer, it's this, that's just not good.
Kind of somewhat ironically, like I was looking at an article once that this article is ironic, but that a sort of way to sort of pick up on how much you sort of can read into being there's some kind of truth or at least some kind of reliableness to whatever the written thing may be, an article, whatever, is how confident does the person sound. If it's like, this is how we do this, and when they said that, it's because of this. I mean, you heard it in my tone, the point I'm making.
Right.
But when someone, you see plenty of articles too that are like, well, even though this isn't always the case, the best I could come up with was this.
Sure.
And then judging that this, like, honestly, it's how dorky does the article sound. If it sounds thorough and dorky, like has written someone who sort of thinks as much as Norman does, you can apt that they have doubts everywhere, so that means you can trust it more.
yeah, definitely. Oh man, what a movie. What else do you have? You must have something else. No?
In what worked?
Yeah.
No, man.
Oh shit.
I just want to keep diving further into what's this mean? What's this mean? I mean, we could go on, but I think we got another couple sections here.
Yeah, let's get through those.
All right, next section. We'll see if we have anything. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Okay, well, this is... Do you have, actually?
I have two things that have always just made me kind of go, just for the briefest of moment. They're really they're nothing really things, but they're just, one of them, they're both shower scene things. I don't know why they did this. There's obviously a fucking reason. In the shots from the wall, looking out toward the door that Norman comes into, right? So when we see the silhouette through the shower curtain, we're essentially looking from the wall's POV because she's in the foreground. So they pushed the set. So the shower head is spraying onto her, but they added an extra stream of water that's a little bit lower to, I guess, fill it out.
I've never noticed that.
Oh my God, it's always really bugged me because it seems super unnecessary, and there must be a reason that it's there that they can justify. But fuck, it super annoys me every time I see it, and it takes me out of that moment. And
I only have one moment that's like that, but it's weird because it's like at the same time I like it. You know, where it's like I wouldn't want to change it. I like it, but it just always kind of gives me that same little pause. Is on the mother chair turn, which it is great when it turns, but there's this like the shake. There's a shake at the end of the chair turn
Sure.
where it feels like there's a silent bum 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 to me, where it's like, whoa, there it is. Which I don't know, when you're just rewatching it, like, I don't know, I feel like I could be in a certain mindset and it totally works. And I like it no matter what. But just as far as like a little, and I hate even saying it, you know, I hate mentioning it. This movie's still it's kind of perfect.
I know the other one for me is when she's died or she's been stabbed and she slides down the tiles, right? And she reaches forward. Her hand is essentially palm down.
Yeah.
And then in the very next cut is a close-up of the hand grabbing the shower curtain, and her hand is now palm to the curtain, so it's rotated. And it's like a continuity thing, I guess, essentially, that always makes me, it confuses me, actually, because I'm like, wait, her hand, it's the wrong hand is what my brain says, but it's not, it's just that it's turned. And it's always it's another little thing that sort of takes me out of the intensity of that moment. I know I'm nitpicking, but
yeah, you are.
That's it though for me.
The only other things I had were more in the context of not like what didn't work for me, but more just like I was curious to talk about what didn't work for other people, or just kind of little questions.
Sure.
I had, and just my question for you was, you know, when we were just like before, you're like at the end of the shower scene when she's lying there with the eye open, you were like, oh, there's the twitch. Oh, there's the shoulder move or whatever. Would you rather have that in a movie like nowadays where they can fix that with CG? Or is just the fact that it existed way before then, like, would you rather take it as like now? Like
are you saying would I rather eliminate that from the movie if I could?
Maybe I'm asking, like, if nowadays, if you were to do it, would you rather have them CG it?
No, I like this. I think what it is it's the result of when you watch something so much, you see the cracks.
Yeah. And
I like that. But I don't want a movie to be perfect.
Right.
Right? Like George Lucas can go fuck off with trying to like to redo things.
This is my
I don't want that
dispute I'm getting at.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
No, I really, let the thing be what it was in the moment it was made, I think is a fair rule that I would like to stick to.
There's really
don't go back.
In a magic of the movies way, movies being something magical, I think there's something to just on some level, the movie is always coming through no matter what. And you can be tuned into it or taken out of it at any given point. And just like, don't mess with that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I can't argue the other side where it's like, yeah, but like digital is just a tool. Like that is the end result. Like, a great song that's edited from multiple takes, like it still becomes a whole,
Yeah, it's an interesting argument. I mean, there's sort of like the necessity of circumstance often leads to better art.
Yeah.
There's like a famous quote, I think it's a quote of Akira Kurosawa being interviewed where a guy was like, the framing of this shot is just amazing. How did you come up with it? And he's like, well, there's a parking lot right there. So I had to frame it this way because I didn't want the parking lot in the shot or whatever the thing was that he didn't want in the shot. And like, to me, that's kind of the fun and beauty of filmmaking is what you get out of the circumstances.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for me is directing. It's like more and more I feel like I've learned, like, you accept, this is, you have to have faith, like, this is it kind of thing, you know, but at the same time, like, you can control more and more and more. I don't know. That's also, I'm constantly interested.
That's true.
Not to harp. I don't want to harp on it. So the other thing,
we evolve with it.
Yeah. Since we talked about, that last scene, how like it's often called just the diatribe exposition dump or whatever, it takes people out. Just to hear, I thought this was a really fun perspective on it, was Ebert toward the end of his review on it.
Oh boy, here we go.
Referred to as a voice.
Okay.
Again, I'm not saying this because it's just, since I figured Tim and I wouldn't have much at all for what did not work, it'd be fun to sort of say something that someone thought, and we like his voice. If I were bold, he says, quote, if I were bold enough to re-edit Hitchcock's film, I would include only the doctor's first explanation of Norman's dual personality. Quote, Norman Bates no longer exists. He only half existed to begin with, and now the other half has taken over, probably for all time. Then I would cut out everything else, the psychiatrist says, and cut to the shots of Norman wrapped in the blanket while his mother's voice speaks. It's sad when a mother has to speak the words that condemn her own son. Those edits I submit would have made Psycho very nearly perfect. I've never encountered a single convincing defense of the psychiatric blather. Truffaut tactfully avoids it in his famous interview. I wish Ebert was still with us for many reasons, but ask him about that. Try to convince him otherwise.
I mean,
Yeah, it'd be, at the same time, that was kind of like, what would that edit do? But as we just said, we were on pins and needles listening to that.
I have an argument to make. Now that time has passed, if you were to cut it that way, it would feel like the end of an episode of The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits or something of that ilk. It would feel too kind of bow tie up with a sentence or two and then be out for me. And I think that what we talked about is a better alternative. Having it be this 5-minute almost kind of bullshitting speaks to a larger thematic thing and works better in the context of the movie.
Yeah.
Ebert's cut or idea of a cut may have worked better in the context of the time, right? Of the style of the time. But doesn't serve, I don't think, the movie better.
He wrote this review in 98.
Well, he's of that time, though, so maybe, I don't know. But still, it's like, it would feel, there are moments in the movie that I'm like, oh, this is feels very like the way a lot of Twilight Zone or Outer Limits episodes are shot, like just the couple like sequences where I go, oh man, that's right, this is that era.
So you're just saying somehow by saying more, it's saying less too? No, sorry, that's not what you were saying at all.
By saying less, by his version, it's saying less. I think it's actually reducing it to an era.
But
it's trying to fit in with an era.
Isn't the argument that this is very era specific because it has to explain so much to its audience to just not walk out? Because that's always like what you get. That's sort of the reasoning for it, is that like, so audiences weren't just like, what the heck just happened?
I like my version of my argument better, that the reason for it is more in a broad context to the themes of the movie.
Great. All right, let's just do our next section because I have a lot there too.
Okay.
You good for,
Oh yeah. No,
great.
I have nothing else.
Okay. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
Well, at the top of my list was the one I already said, the sandwiches and milk. I thought that was very important to note.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing I have that's not just stuff I got from other places, my own original observation. This is, I think, the only series I can think of, and it's extremely apropos in terms of Psycho going crazy, that you can watch in an endless loop and it works chronologically, because the fourth one is both a sequel to the third one and a prequel to the first one.
Right. Oh, shit.
So that's one of the reasons why, aside from just sort of like, the other reasons why it was cool to end with the first one.
Yeah.
It works in that sense too. Like we had just seen the prequel to the original in a sense,
right,
as well as the sequel.
Right.
Yeah. That just kind of blew my mind.
That's awesome.
What do you think of that?
I think that's true.
Yes. Okay, and I guess the last other one I had to mention was this isn't my recommendation, though I do recommend it. There is a Psycho 5.
No, fuck off.
It's called Psycho 5.
I hate you.
The Beginning of the End. It was made by like, what's his name? Like Horror Fan 866 or something.
785 or whatever.
It's like a number, two numbers. Some kid on YouTube released this feature-length film shot at like, it looks like it could be like just some whatever big track house in Phoenix kind of thing. I think he's in Texas maybe. He plays all the parts, including it's about Norman's son, Nathan. And this kid gives it his all, Tim, in the performances. And honestly, the way that he plays crazy, like in some parts, like where just someone's going insane, like I loved it. You couldn't, it's just kind of these inspired moments of like how he, like the way he'd sing a song and like the way he screams when he's finally playing the grandmother. It's not mother at this point. It's Nathan's grandmother. And like how inventive to work with, like, Tim, I love anything that's just like someone, honestly, things like that are really inspiring to me, that someone can show like he came up with the story to it and the story worked. Like, honestly, I would use that as a jumping off point where it's like, it comes into the story. It's his dad, Norman, has just passed away. And so we have a sort of, a news reporter, I think, to check up with him, or like someone trying to cover a story to sort of talk to him for the first time. And it's like, yeah, it's so weird. It's as amateurish as you can imagine. That's why Tim's just kind of over here like, God, this is so bad. I mean, of course, this is so teenage, but like, he loves these movies. It starts with a dedication to like Alfred Hitchcock and Anthony Daniels.
Yes, C-3PO.
Anthony Perkins.
I appreciate how much you appreciate this.
Why don't you? What's wrong with you? It's
just like something that I want to watch. I just don't. It doesn't give me any pleasure. That's fine.
You don't have to watch it, but it's like, can't you see how it's just someone's?
Of course, I can see that.
Right.
I'm not gonna spend time watching it though.
Someone's I don't know, love for something just on display that much, and just someone's persistence in making a whole feature. Like, honestly, it's more inspiring to me than like anything I really ever go see on a weekly basis or whatever.
Yeah.
Psycho 5, The Beginning of the End. I almost wanted to make it my recommendation, Tim, officially. Well, I don't think you'd have that. So now I'm just kind of like...
I mean, you can live your life. I don't care what you do.
Off the cuff, people, you'll know it's for you. Maybe. Actually, you can check out... I kind of did a mini story and saved it on our Instagram. Yeah. It's called Psycho 5 if you look at the saved stories. Yep. Anyway, enough with that. But you see why I had to mention that.
Oh, yeah. The ones that I have are pretty basic, whatever. I just think it's fun when you watch a series, all the connected threads.
Aren't you glad? See, I love doing that, like, Tim.
You know, like when, especially the order we did it, then we get back to the original and you get all of the references that are in the sequels. So like the diner, when Norman talks about the diner, I was like, oh, that's the fucking diner. Yeah. When Marion... says not inordinately in the very beginning of the movie. I'm like, fuck yeah, that's in 4. So little things like that are just super pleasing. The other thing that it's obviously just a coincidence, but what a nice coincidence in a way, that Vera Miles and Vera Farmiga, very unusual name, right? Vera are both in Psycho, properties. Vera Farmiga plays Norma Bates in Bates Hotel.
God, Tim, I need to watch that.
You do need to watch it, actually, because it's good.
It could be just my favorite show if these are my new favorite movies, right?
The dude in that, I don't remember his Freddie
Highmore.
Highmore, thank you. He's good.
Cool.
He is a good Norman.
Awesome. I watched Cinemassacre is a YouTube channel I like. He had a What Happened to the Psycho House video. I think you should just watch that, Tim, because you were curious about it. Anyways, this has a really interesting kind of, you can't quite, honestly, he did his research but couldn't quite figure it out. Like, it's been sort of knocked down and rebuilt all these times, and like was inspired by a painting that was inspired by a real house, and like parts of it were moved around on other houses, stuff like that.
Well, to that point,
the motel they had to build. Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead.
The motel they had to build new for every single one, apparently, too.
I could see that.
So, as I already kind of said, what was interesting, I said in that house, it's been moved around tons of times. And it's actually disputed. There's definitely, I heard where they said from when it was the first time, from the first Psycho to the second one, it was knocked down and rebuilt somewhere else entirely in Universal Studios. And then after that, I got no confirmation on all these things, whether it's possible that where it's sitting now is where it was in Psycho 2, but there's no confirmation on that I could find. And also, I kind of have to laugh at us, like just kind of us being so into this movie into the story of, maybe it was possible, when we were like, was it a full set, the house that they were in? No, it was just two walls. It's only those two walls that we see, the front and its right side. Like, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, and then that's it. There was nothing else inside of it. And then eventually, like, for whatever, when they used the same house on other films, they'd build the next wall and build it, so it eventually became a full house.
Wait, so anytime in the first movie that you're in the house, you're on a set? That you're not in...
Correct.
So you're on a soundstage.
Correct.
That makes sense, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot easier to control.
That's why I'm kind of laughing at ourselves, yeah.
Yeah. We never see anybody go in. I guess not. There's always a cut.
Yeah, they have the basement and stuff, that side, but no, we only ever see those two sides in the first one. And yeah, it's kind of like that old story of, if you rebuild a boat one piece at a time, is it still the original boat or whatever? That's kind of what I got.
I worry about that all the time with my boats.
That's the I forget this. That is the example they use, but that's kind of what I got, was the story of this house.
Yeah.
But maybe it's this one. Maybe it's the same location we see it in still in Psycho 2, which I thought was kind of exciting. And I listened to the whole commentary, with him, and Stephen Rebello, author of Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, which I wish I'd known about, because I totally would have read it leading up to this, had the excuse to read it. So John Gavin, who played Sam Loomis at the beginning, he was being like groomed by Universal to be kind of a new leading man or whatever. But it was just kind of funny. Apparently in that opening scene when he's shirtless, he was super shy and nervous about having to do that.
Wow.
So he's like hearing the leading men who are, show traits that aren't that, because of course, like, leading men aren't like real
just people.
Yeah. The opening scene is what I wanted. So the writer Joseph, Stefano, who wrote the screenplay and came back for Psycho 4. So Hitchcock was always skeptical of younger talent, joining him and stuff, or green talent and the like. So what won Stefano over for Hitchcock was that what was scene? It was the opening scene, how it was written. When Hitchcock gave that to his wife Alma, she was kind of the man behind the curtain in Hitchcock movies in a lot of ways, where she liked the scene. She said she loved it, and then he was on board. One that we should... So there's a movie that I haven't seen. Have you seen Les Diaboliques?
Yes.
Really? Okay, so that's what I was... Maybe you should watch for a show. I haven't seen it. But that was the main inspiration and influence for Psycho.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Where just sort of... He had the thought of, like... That kind of inspired him to do... I don't know. Maybe you could speak more specifically how that could have inspired him.
Barely remember it. I think there's a crazy mom.
Okay, great. All I need to know.
I think, and they live in a fairly secluded house. That's kind of there's like a pit.
He thought, at the time, Caesar saw how horror movies were doing well, and he thought, well, what if, I can make good movies that are popular? Now, what if someone like me tried to make one? So that's where it all came from. There's second unit footage, when she's driving in the car at the beginning, that you see Christmas lights in. That I never noticed are Christmas decorations.
Yes.
Okay, that's just because that's the footage they came up with. They came back with the second unit and ended up using that. That's why it's set in December. Otherwise, there was no plan at all to send it December because you have that titles cards at the opening that says December 11th or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
funny.
They were working on the total budget of $800,000 back then. The house cost is those two walls, just to give you an idea, just $15,000 total. That's all they had to spend on making the house.
What is that in today's dollars?
Right? But even back then, that's cheap, right?
It's probably, wait, how much?
$15,000.
$15,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
I just thought that was sounded pretty cheap even for back then.
It's like 100,000 now or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Maybe it is more than I thought, but I don't know. Yeah, I probably got excited about that, not knowing how much inflation actually is.
If it were 1,500, it would be like, holy fuck, that's nothing.
So the snacking that we love so much, that
Candy
was
corns with K's?
Huh?
Candy corns with K's?
Candy corn with K's. So that was Anthony Perkins' idea, but it was Hitchcock, he loved it because it reminded him of a bird, but then he was the one who suggested it was candy corn.
Nice.
Shower scene I thought was fun to learn is that the way that Janet Leigh specifically playing it is because in the book and other things it's described as it's a weird face of a woman or with a lot of makeup on, but just to confirm, Janet Leigh was playing it as reacting to seeing Norman coming at her.
That's cool.
So it's fun just to watch it. Okay, we know that's her scene. This dude I just spent this time with is
would be upsetting
wearing this woman's dress and wig and killing me. So it's fun knowing that's how she played it. The voice of the mother,
Frank Oz.
Yeah, Frank Oz. It's 3 different women make up the voice, and they splice it in different parts or something.
Oh,
and
fuck, that's weird.
Yeah, they did it because they wanted the audience to not be able to, I don't know, just not to sound totally right, just to sound a little off in some way.
Shit.
And I thought it was fun, when you're talking about that last scene of him sitting as his mother. That's when he mentioned it in the commentary, but at any time throughout the film, the crew said it was really just disconcerting and creepy to be in the room with Anthony Perkins when he was in character.
Oh,
that they could feel, this sort of the energy exuding from him in a way, of the character. And then his audience reactions that he mentioned were so much fun. Where you said it, Tim, during the shower scene, people were flipping out. He said they're screaming, they're running up and down the aisles and out of the theaters. It's incredible, right?
I should ask my parents if because they were too young. Shit, they're both 10.
I think it was either somewhere in the shower scene or the ending with the reveal and the mother rushing, his mother rushing with the knife, where he said the woman behind him grabbed his shirt.
Oh my God, that is awesome.
So then I checked out from actually an archived site, doesn't exist anymore, thepsychomovies.com. You can still go there and poke around. It's Internet Archive, whatever. The Hilton Green, the producer, on all the other ones, and then the assistant on Psycho. They have a podcast with him. That's just a phone call they made. And it's available nowhere else. It's worth checking out. It's pretty cool. But Hilton Green said that on the very first TV shows that he did with Hitchcock or whatever, when he was first hired, Hitchcock, he didn't say a word to him. He thought it was so weird. He didn't, was doing whatever else his job entailed. But I was like, what does he think of me? So he got the call to be on Psycho, and he's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. Hitchcock asked for you specifically. You're on, if you want it. So then as soon as he joined up on Psycho, Hitchcock, he was talking to him like they were old friends. So it was this kind of like, just, he wants to like test him or
weird,
or just kind of be like, you know, see how he does if he's, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, exactly. Weird. And then also, so Hilton Green, he had some kind of contradictory things with what's said elsewhere. Like Hilton Green said that like, oh, you know, you always hear about how Hitchcock has everything storyboarded to a T, the whole movie's pre-planned kind of thing. He said, yeah, that's true for a lot of it, but there's also stuff where like Hitchcock was walk in and figure it out. And then, but then that it was weird. In the commentary, this guy, Stephen Orbella, who obviously talked to everyone, said that again, that no, all of it was pre-planned. All of it was storyboard, except for, you know,
there we go.
So,
people saying that they know shit about shit, and they're so sure about it.
And then same with Hilton Green said that you always hear on the Universal Studio tour that it was chocolate syrup used for blood.
Yeah, you always hear that.
Hilton Green is like, no, it's, you know, the makeup department, like maybe they used some chocolate syrup as part of it, but they were just using like whatever, you know, they make stuff. It's not just like they didn't just go.
Right.
But
they
then,
didn't just go buy a fucking bottle of Hershey's syrup and pour it down the drain.
Right. But then I think it was the stand-in who actually played like, you know, even more in Janet Leigh in the shower scene, where she said, no, it was like the syrup again. So I don't know. Oh. It is contested. And then it was also fun to hear that, like, and also that what they always tell you is the water was cold to make Janet Leigh whatever. But like, no, as Hilton Green said, they had a heater. It was warm. Again, I don't even know how to believe. So I mentioned, it was 78 camera setups and 52 cuts, the shower scene. I know that because there is a documentary called 78 over 52 Hitchcock shower scene.
Yes, I've heard about this.
You
know what's funny? My short film that I just shot is about that same amount. We did about
that's
70,
your short film.
Yeah, my short film that's like going to be 12 minutes long. It was about 70 some odd setups, just what, 50 some odd
2
shots
minutes?
probably. Yeah, that's amazing.
So I watched that last night, and shower scene. It was. What did I get from that? The whole shower scene it was like a third of Janet Leigh's overall filming, like as a 7-day shoot. So it was huge. Like, I just thought it was interesting. Like, Hitchcock went into it knowing that this was the scene of the movie kind of thing. Like,
holy shit.
And you can see it, but like really knowing he wanted that many shots, that much time to put into it was pretty cool. Anyway, nothing too specific from that.
That's crazy. It seems like you could do that in a day. Yeah. But when you actually start to pull it apart, it's like, yeah, of course that took a while.
Well, yeah, you think of like the shower, like I think you pointed the shower head coming right at camera. Mm-hmm. How is it not hitting the lens? They had to like block the specific little, holes.
Shit. Yeah.
And then, because I watched as much it's actually hard to find, but I was looking for stuff on Anthony Perkins just on YouTube, interviews and the whatnot. There's not a whole lot, and what I found took a little digging. But you kind of always hear like, oh yeah, he was typecast the rest of his life because of this, and wasn't too happy about it. And his reaction though was like, no, it was all the same to me. It was acting, and I just saw it as, I have my professional life and then my, my actual life, and whatever I was doing made no difference to me, kind of thing. Like, but, and that's on top of course, he loved the role and was grateful for it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But just if that notion existed out there, I wanted to nip that, as well as, any that he was kind of being, brought up by the studio to be like the next James Dean, Gary Cooper, Spencer Tracy, like leading man type. And then he was asked in this, actually, this was the last interview with him ever that was done on AMC, like right before he died. But he said, the interviewer was kind of asking him like, oh, didn't that let you down? You never became that. And he said, no, that never occurred to me. I was a kid. I was working. I was having a good time. I wasn't paying attention to anything like that. And then, him. On directing Psycho 3, I know it's not Psycho 1, but Psycho 3, it sounds like he was really asking for help, especially in terms of the technical department. Like he sounded like he kind of had regrets about that movie in a lot of ways, where it was kind of like everyone, he says, because he says it's my fault because I exuded too much confidence, articulateness, enthusiasm, and appropriateness. They thought I was doing it right. But he kept trying to ask for like, trying to get people to help him out and say, what do you think of this?
Weird.
And then he wanted Universal to be giving feedback on the dailies and stuff like that. But he said they were more concerned with just getting the movie rushed and done than spending time looking at the dailies and critiquing them, or not wanting to critique them. I just wish he lived long enough to know that, like,
we loved it.
Yeah, it has its cult following now. But then on a rest in peace note, God, I started tearing up, Tim, at the end of this interview. Like one person commented like he died the next day. It was probably more like, it was at least within the month. Mm-hmm. But he just says like, the interview ends with him saying how happy and thankful he is to still be, he says a lot of actors reach their 50s, 60s and, you know, kind of lose their relevance. And I'm just grateful to be working at all. He didn't say he was just thankful to be working. He says thankful to be working and alive.
Yeah. Well, he was great.
Yeah. Well, what else do you have? That was, sorry. I knew you knew I came with all this crap.
I was prepared. Nothing really. Should we do a recommendation?
Yeah, recommendations.
What do you got?
Actually, I did just want to, it's the documentary that I just mentioned, 78 over 52, I wanted to recommend Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's called 7852, Hitchcock's shower scene. And I went in, I'm like, God, they made a whole documentary on this. Like, so, really, guys? But, like, I kind of recommend it in the context if you're watching these all and you just want to have fun geeking out over it. It kind of starts out, there's like a reenactment at the beginning that's a little hokey, but then the rest of it was all, it's actually really well done. And it has everyone from like Guillermo del Toro, Elijah Wood, like you saw all this, all these, anyone who's everyone kind of pops up in it, kind of the Peter Bogdanovich. Like,
great.
Anyway, it was fun to geek out with these other film geeks on screen and just why not just dissect it. And it kind of is fun because it makes the argument that like this is his most important film, that this is maybe one of the most important films in American cinema, and that all kind of is is emblematic in this one scene. So it's kind of, They make that case and you get fun tidbits and fun geeking out over it. So that's my recommendation.
Cool. I was, as Ryan knows, because I was watching it when he came over, watching the original Last House on the Left. And I can now recommend it because it's pretty good. It's fucked up. We had an interesting thought that like if we could combine the two, it would be a fucking amazing movie.
Take the best of both. It'd be the perfect left house. If the remake was too slick and the other one was too gross and dirty and grungy and something.
Yeah. If you took the 70s-ness of the original and the depth of story and sort of plot point story stuff of the new one, it would be ridiculously good.
I thought I was actually curious to find you watching it because I thought you didn't like the original at all.
I had never seen it. Yeah. I had seen,
but you liked
a scene from it, I think, and had been told about it and had seen it in documentaries.
Right. Well, what did you like about it so much enough to recommend it?
Well, the sideburns are out of this world, for one thing. Everybody's just rolling with deep sideburns. No, it's just, it's still the same kind of vibe. It's got this kind of almost feministy thing going on, and just like the chaos of the dickheads in it it's much, much more upsetting from like the character standpoint, like the characters that are the four bad guys, I just think that they're more upsetting. They're less actory. They feel like real fucking people, and it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
The graphicness of the stuff they do to the two girls, it's got its own thing to it. I like the new one better in how the impact of the rape scene, I think, is a little more I don't know, it's different. But yeah, great. All in all, it's worth it. It paved the way.
Awesome. All right. Well, now, Tim, next week's movie. Should we decide what we're going to watch?
Yeah, we should. What are we going to pull from that? Oh, what's that noise? Oh!
That's right, folks. Straight from the Psycho movies to a movie in theaters. That's what that bell means, Tim. That's what our skull bike bell means. What are we going to go see?
Oh, man, we got to go see The Lighthouse, dude.
Yeah, of course. Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, followed up to The Witch. It looks great.
Yeah. Maybe there's a goat in it. We don't know.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited to see it. I always hate talking about, honestly, I mean, it's fun, but like, I kind of hate talking about movies when they first come out. I know we're supposed to do it and it's fun too, but like, I want to sit with them.
Yeah.
Like, why do you need to hear us talk about it right away?
Well, cause
why not?
Yeah.
People want to know what you think.
I will say I know absolutely nothing about the movie. I've completely avoided anything.
Avoiding trailers.
I forgot even like who was like what the significance of it was.
I'm jealous. I've seen enough stills and blah blah blah, but still not much at all.
I've seen nothing but the poster when I looked up the show times today.
So you should see it if you haven't already.
Yeah,
because it's been out a bit now. Couple weeks, whatever. Hope you, if you did it, if this is Halloween for you, thanks for hanging in there with us.
Happy Halloween. Go carve a pumpkin and throw some candy at a kid's face or something.
Right. Throw candy at a kid's face. Is that what you did as a kid?
No, that's what happened to me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And thanks for hanging in with us. You want to hear us talk about a excellent classic, just perfect movie? You're gonna get an episode this long. So
that's right.
You ask for it again. Be forewarned.
Oh my god.
Can't leave it anything out.
Can't wait for next year when we do.
Let's decide then.
Yeah.
All right. If you have something you want, another series, I'd love to cover another series, Tim. So if you have one you want us to cover in 4 episodes, let us know for next Halloween. Until, well, not then, but until next time, you can keep up with us at dismemberinghorror.com and our Instagram at dismemberinghorror.
Gmail.
Yeah.
All those things. You know the drill.
Great.
Happy Halloween, y'all.
And so, as we promised in the very first episode of the Psycho series that we did, Psycho 2, if you stuck to the very end, we'd be revealing why I called Tim Moonlight Tim at the beginning. It is because of Mr. Anthony Perkins' short-lived music career. He had a single called Moonlight Swim that reached the top 10 of something or other. And we're going to play it for you now.
Yeah.
So, from the album The Prettiest Girl in School, written by Ben Wiseman and Sylvia D, and sung by none other than ours and yours, Anthony Perkins. Here's Moonlight Swim. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Let's go on a moonlight swim, far away from the crowd, all alone upon the beach. Our lips and our arms close within each other's reach. We'll be on a moonlight swim. Let's go on a moonlight swim. To the raft we can race, and for just a little while I'll sit and pretend that you're on a desert isle with me. On a moonlight swim. Though the air is cold, with kisses oh so sweet, I'll keep you warm 2 feet. Let's go on a moonlight swim. We're in love and above there's a crazy gold balloon that sits winking down and inviting us to come on in on a moonlight swim.